Chapter 350. There were 3 ways to attack. Left, center, and right. These 5 players, except for Shui Yao Yao, were all professionals. Not to mention the opponent's lineup. Cool. So fast. Sakura Stream Team will win this round. Whether it was the 2 reporters or the fans in the audience, they all had the same opinion. After all, just from the screen, they knew that Sakura Stream Team was not only fast, but also had 3 players in the middle lane. Seeing that they had almost reached the Crystal Tower, 3 or 4 strong attacks, the firepower was very fierce. Destroyed, the tower is going to be destroyed. But was it really destroyed? They saw a person suddenly accelerate and rush directly to this side. Originally, the 3 players of Sakura Stream Team were not afraid. But they didn't expect that a stun came out of nowhere. The 3 players were collectively frozen. That person concentrated his energy, first killed one with a sweep, and finally turned back for a critical hit. Yunhu double kill. My god. Who is this person so powerful? The fans in the audience were a little stunned. However, other than Yunhu, no one else had seen the person who had used the fatal stun that had assisted him. The people of the Supreme Alliance finally breathed a sigh of relief. But even with a double kill, the situation was not optimistic. Because their bottom lane was attacked again. And Shuji double kill. Double kill? Did that mean that Yin Wuyao and Lin Feng didn't stop him? They were all killed by Shuji. The people of the Supreme Alliance trembled, everyone became nervous, and even clenched their hands. However, almost in the next second, Shui Yaoyao only saw a line of words appear on the screen in front of her. Our defense tower has been destroyed. Beautiful. The commentator couldn't help sighing in Tokyo dialect. It seems that Shuji's hand speed has become faster these days. His attack power is also amazing. This time, the people of the Supreme Alliance are in big trouble. Lin Feng didn't expect that he would die. His eyes were heavy, and he typed in the dialogue box. After the sneak attack, he retreated very fast. Should we add another player to go down the bottom lane? No need. The person who spoke was Chinemo. Even though he was still fighting in front, no one expected him to have the time to reply. Both of you walk in tandem, stick close to the bushes. Lin Feng grunted in acknowledgement. After recovering his health in the center of the city, he and Yin Wuyao continued to attack the bottom lane. Xiao and Ren are gone. Strange, there's nothing in the bushes here either. At this moment, someone shouted. He's on the middle lane. Shuji was indeed in the middle lane. He approached Qin Mo on purpose, looking for a chance to sneak attack. How could Lin Feng let him have his way? He sped up and blocked with his sword before sweeping horizontally. Motherf asterisk her, I didn't hit it. The other party was too fast and good at fighting in the wild, just like the information said. Even if he and Yin Wuyao worked together, they would only be able to take out half of his health. When Shuji restarted, his HP was full. Then he did another sweep. A rumbling sound rang out. Shuji double kill. Another double kill? Everyone in Supreme Alliance paled. 4 lives, Lin Feng and Yin Wuyao had already died twice. If they died again, they would be asked to leave the field by the referee. That also meant that the 5v5 would become a 3v5, 3 against 5. It would be a tough fight. Chapter 351. Fortunately, their performance in the middle lane was good, and they took down 2 defense towers in a row. The next defense tower was the opponent's main city. However, it was obvious that Yunhu's HP was gone, and only a little bit of HP was left to support him. Any random person would be able to kill him in a second. If Yunhu died, they would lose 5 lives. It seems that the situation of the Supreme Alliance is not optimistic. TSK, I guess Shuji is not interested in this game. His opponents are too weak. I know, right? That reporter curled his lips and looked very disdainful. I don't know what the opponent's captain is doing. Does he really deserve to be the captain? He is not even as good as that guy named Yunhu. Didn't Shuji just say that his hand was injured? Another reporter was quite understanding. I don't think it's because of the injury. It's because he is too lousy. When the discussion outside the field started, Fujio was still sitting in the same position, with her right hand behind her back and a lollipop in her mouth, but she didn't rub her eyes again. Feng Shang was anxious. He wished he could be on the field now so he could help. At this time, Shuji had already started to attack the second defense tower on their right. Lin Feng was a little anxious and wanted to rush over. Then Qin Emo sent a message, "Don't go out of the tower, just defend." It meant that they shouldn't attack. Lin Feng and Yin Weao also knew that it was not suitable for them to attack now. But they were worried about one thing. What if Shuji attacks the captain from the side when he sees that we don't go out? Yun, whose status showed that he was still healing in the city. That meant that there were only 2 people under the defense tower in the middle lane, Shui Yao Yao and the captain. If Shuji went over, it would probably be another double kill. Let him come. 3 words. A tone that was not painful at all. Even Yin Weao, who had never played with Qin Mo in the league tournament, felt an indescribable passion rise in his heart when he saw that sentence. As for Lin Feng, his eyes, which had been filled with anxiety, gradually calmed down. After killing the monsters, he ran back to the defensive tower. At this time, Shui Yao Yao sent a kill and killed a member of Sakura Stream Squad. Seeing this, Shuji immediately changed his route and went to outflank Qin Mo. This time, the other party is probably going to be annihilated. That's right, there's no point in killing one person, there are still 2 people left in Sakura Stream. Yo, are they starting to run back? I've never seen such a cowardly captain. While the reporters were still talking, the 2 members of Sakura Stream Squad rushed towards Qin Mo. Shui Yao Yao stood under the defense tower, her hand holding the mouse tightly. She had the urge to turn around and run. However, she didn't forget that before they set off, Almighty Qin said that this path was mainly for attacking, so she couldn't retreat. It was as though Supreme Alliance was being chased and beaten. Yun, whose HP was full. But what was the point? In such a short time, it was impossible for him to return to the middle lane to help. Chapter 352. What on earth is the captain of the Supreme Alliance doing? He can't even beat a female player. How on earth did he become the captain? That's right. Female players all know how to kill people. They don't know anything except being chased. Isn't this just in line with the image of the Chinese people? Speaking of this, the audience burst into laughter. The 2 players of Sakura Stream Squad were in a killing frenzy, and they rushed forward recklessly. Yamaguchi was still on the left lane, and he was about to tell them not to go. But it was too late. The 2 players saw that Shuji was about to arrive, so they didn't have anything to be afraid of. They had to kill each other once. They are looking for death. These 4 were Fujio's words. She had a faint smile on the corner of her mouth, but if you looked closely, you would find that it was full of bloodthirst. As soon as she finished her words, the 3 of them appeared behind Qin Mo. Shuji was behind the 2 players. The people in front of him launched 2 big moves at Qin Mo. According to logic, 2 killing 1 should be enough. But in that second, Qin Mo moved and avoided one of the attacks. When the other attack came, he had already entered the defense line. How could the people of Sakura Stream Squad miss such a good opportunity? Now in their minds, Qin Mo's skills were so bad that they couldn't be any worse. Probably because of his hand injury, his momentum was so weak that it was pitiful. Shuji didn't care about the opponent's reason. With such bad skills, how could he fight with him? He waved the mouse and sped up, ready to kill Qin Mo and Shui Yao Yao together. It was so aggressive. The fans of Sakura Stream Squad already felt that there was no suspense. It was absolutely a double kill. However, what they didn't expect was that Qin Mo, who they thought was very bad, actually turned a sword shadow at this moment, and a huge wind rose around him. The bright light almost occupied the whole screen. The 2 players closest to him were instantly killed by his 2 back and forth movements, and they only had 1 drop of HP left. The 2 players of Sakura Stream Squad were stunned, and they wanted to run back immediately. At this time, Shui Yao Yao swept across with a big move, and with a bang, 2 kills. Shuji didn't retreat. He also saw that the captain of the Supreme Alliance could only sweep back and do nothing else. Although the sweep was quite accurate, it was useless against him. Shuji wielded the keyboard, manipulated his game character, and directly stabbed Qin Mo's face. Before the commentator could say anything, the fans shouted, "Is that person stupid? He ran so hard just now, and now he's sending himself to death." Shuji also narrowed his eyes, and the murderous intent in the corner of his mouth was obviously mocking, "Trash, go to hell." With his speed, no one could stop him. Unless it was that young man, there was still a possibility. Someone else? Shuji. Chapter 353. Fujio tilted her head, and with a lollipop in her mouth, she gently spat out 2 words. The people on the scene only heard a booming sound. Qin Mo turned his hand over, holding the mouse, and pressing the keys with his left hand. The long sword flashed and hit Shuji right in the middle. That kind of attack. Handsome, unruly, and invincible. Everyone looked at this scene in a daze, and they all felt an unprecedented shock from their eyes. What on earth was that? 3,000 knife cutting? This is the real 3,000 knife cutting. A fan of the Supreme Alliance stood up in the audience, and his voice was so loud that it almost shook people's eardrums, which showed how excited he was. 3,000 knife cutting? What was that? People almost didn't believe that Shuji would die like this. However, the screen did show the logo of KO. They looked down and saw Qin Mo, who was sitting in front of the computer. That man was so handsome that he looked like he came out of a comic book. He wore headphones on his pure black hair, and the whole screen was filled with silver light. However, did he think that it was over? Not at all. The man's slender fingers held the mouse, and with a very handsome posture, he turned around and rushed straight. Only a booming sound. The last defense crystal tower in the middle lane of Sakura Stream Team was destroyed. This, the commentators couldn't come out. How could they explain it? Not only did he kill people, but he also went back to attack the city. The people of Sakura Stream Team suddenly fell into silence. In one team, there were 4 people in the state of resurrection. Except for Yamaguchi, who was on the road, he was still there. The other 3 players only felt that their arms were numb. What on earth was that? Yamaguchi's deep voice came over. 3,000 knife cutting. Isn't 3,000 knife cutting a unique skill? This was what everyone understood it to mean. They all knew that when the captain of the Supreme Alliance turned around to deal with them for the first time, he used this unique skill. 3,000 silver lights flashed, they all saw it. But what was that later? This time, Yamaguchi not only lowered his voice, but also his eyes. For Qin Mo, 3,000 knife cutting is not just a simple unique skill, but 3 goals he wants to achieve. Originally, there was no time to talk. But Yamaguchi couldn't rush to the middle lane. Rushing over was courting death. On the contrary, if he destroyed another tower here on the top lane, they still had hope to win. After listening to Yamaguchi's description, the 3 members of Sakura Stream were all stunned. 3 targets? What the captain meant was, that person had planned it from the very beginning. First, he would reduce the 2 of them to 1 drop of HP, then let his teammates kill them, then he would go and kill Shuji. His final goal was to attack their defense tower. What 3,000 knife cutting? It's just luck. Shuji was very unconvinced, and his eyes were gloomy. If I also had a teammate to heal me, I could also continuously cast spells and have a healer keep up with me. 3 targets? Then I will break his saber. After saying that, Shuji rushed out. 2 of the Sakura Stream members didn't believe that anyone could have such a precise plan. They waved their weapons and shouted, "I'll heal. I'll support you." The 3 of them set off together. Yamaguchi didn't have time to stop him. Chapter 354. He didn't trust Yamaguchi 100%. His commanding power was scattered, and he was arrogant and conceited. People who didn't know would think they had 2 captains now. Maybe this was the disadvantage of a rookie king. He was too arrogant, and the manager of Sakura Stream Team didn't want to discipline him. The Almighty had probably noticed this from the start. That was why he attacked like this. But compared with provoking people, the Almighty was better. He knew that Shuji was easily agitated, but he killed him in the grass with the field battle that Shuji was good at. It could be seen that Shuji had lost all his judgment. As soon as he saw Qin Emo turn around and run, he immediately ordered, "Chase him." But they didn't notice that Yun, who had resurrected at this time. Yin Weiyao and Lin Feng on the right side also began to quickly move to the center. All of a sudden, they formed an encirclement on the left and the front. Seeing that the people chasing in front of him were gone, Shuji realized something and wanted to retreat. But Yun Hu and Shui Yaoyao had already rushed over. They had seen Yun Hu's fierceness, so they used a big move. One of them immediately lost half of his HP. The two who had only died once thought that Lin Feng and Yin Weiyao didn't dare to fight close to them at this time, so they wanted to attack Yun Hu and then retreat. But they didn't expect that the opponents didn't hesitate at all. They directly rushed over and stood in front of Yun Hu, and then used a big move. Two members of Sakura Stream team died instantly. Shuji was the first to notice the danger, so he directly jumped into the grass without saying anything. He wanted to ambush there, and when Lin Feng and Yin Weiyao came over, he would give them a big move from the back. Because it was clear that Lin Feng and Yin Weiyao had lost HP, Yun Hu went to kill their captain, so he was the most suitable person to guard here. But what Shuji didn't expect was that as soon as he squatted down, swoosh, his back was pierced through. It was just like when he had killed someone before. Someone had hidden in the bushes and slashed him with a knife. Who was it? Shuji's eyes were red. He moved his mouse and wanted to fight back. But it was useless. Qin Emo moved beautifully and fixed him with skills. Then he started to beat him up. Shuji had never been humiliated like this before. The people in the Sakura Stream audience didn't know what to say, and everyone covered their mouths. The two reporters were even more speechless. Those fans who said that it was in line with the style of Chinese people shut their mouths. His face hurt from the slap. But Feng Shang didn't understand. "Idol, why didn't the Almighty use a critical strike and kill him directly? Why is he still beating him up bit by bit?" Fu Jiu wasn't sure either. If it were her, she could just freeze and kill him directly, which would save a lot of time. However, very soon, they knew the answer. Qin Emo typed slowly, "Does it feel good to kill you like this?" Shuji, who had a little bit of HP left, might have had a chance to escape. With a bang, he stood up from his seat. He clenched his fists and looked over at Supreme Alliance with a dark gaze. Qin Emo took advantage of this gap and moved his mouse. KO. The enemy's entire team was annihilated. Fu Jiu looked at this scene and seriously compared herself with the Almighty. In comparison, the Almighty was more shameless. What was the name of her provocation just now? It was not as real as the Almighty's provocation. Chapter 355. Shuji's face turned red and white as he watched himself fall down in blood. He didn't understand why the other party had to kill him like this, bit by bit. Manager Feng understood a little. After all, he knew his Almighty so well. According to the Almighty's style, he wouldn't cut people down so slowly, unless, has this Shuji met Boss Qin before? Feng Yi asked his brother. Feng Shang stuttered as he recounted what had happened at the training ground that day. His face was filled with anger. After Manager Feng heard this, he instantly understood and said meaningfully, "Co Qin is helping someone get revenge." Revenge? Feng Shang didn't understand. Then, the person who won that day was my idol. Feng Yi patted his brother's shoulder. "Young man, you're still too young." Boss Qin was the kind of person who would blame Spade's eye inflammation on that mash. So, when he killed Shuji, it was clear that he wanted to hang him up and beat him. Yamaguchi knew that they were bound to lose this game. He wanted to go back and defend, but he was the only one who had resurrected. He could no longer withstand the attacks of the other five. Individually, everyone in Sakura Stream might have great abilities, and any one of them was much more powerful than Shui Yaoyao, but they were too scattered. 5 people attacked the city together. How could Yamaguchi resist? Especially when Qin Emo changed his previous attacking style. After seeing Yamaguchi, he didn't even hesitate. First, he stunned him, and then he made a big move. Then, he retreated and unleashed another long-range critical strike. His hand speed was so fast that it was almost beautiful. Apart from the silver light flashing again, the only thing that could be seen was a brief pause before he raised his sword and advanced again. Qin Emo gave an order to Yun Hu, who was standing beside him. Stop them. Yes. Yun Hu didn't waste time. He risked losing HP and rushed in for a critical strike. As Yamaguchi fell, Shui Yaoyao sent out a healing skill, and all the Supreme Alliance members were instantly full of HP. The 5 of them unleashed their ultimate moves in succession, directly destroying the enemy's city. The silver letters that symbolized victory filled the entire screen. Shuji didn't even have the chance to revive. He could only watch helplessly. Yamaguchi's right hand seemed to be shocked. He originally thought that he could at least hold on until all his teammates were resurrected. However, what he didn't expect was, compared to the greenhorn Qin Emo of the past, the current Qin Emo was frighteningly strong. How did he do it? How did he calculate so accurately? The audience of Sakura Stream School fell into complete silence this time. They had never expected such an ending. Sakura Stream was one of the top 4 teams in the country. How could they be beaten by a small Chinese team to the point where they were powerless to retaliate? But reality was right in front of him. They had no choice but to believe it. At the same time, the most valuable member of the team appeared on the screen, Qin Emo. At this moment, some people were unconvinced. Even if the Huaxia team wins, shouldn't the MVP award be given to Shuji? He got 2 double kills. Even the captain of Supreme Alliance didn't kill many people. What right does he have to be the MVP? However, in the next second, these people automatically fell silent. This was because the opponent's battle record had also appeared on the screen. Chapter 356. 10 assists. When did this happen? Why didn't they notice it? And the whole Sakura Stream team only died 12 times in total. That was to say, 10 of them were related to Qin Emo? Is the data wrong? Some people didn't believe it at all. But one of the processes of the esports competition was that the most valuable players' fighting scene would be shown separately. People didn't know what was going on until Qin Mo's actions were enlarged on the screen. They didn't realize it until they saw it. At the beginning, half of the reason why Tiger Cloud could kill so quickly was because Qin Emo had stunned the opponent from behind, which fixed the members of Sakura Stream Squad on this side. Not to mention that Shui Yaoyao's first kill was also because of Qin Emo. People didn't see it before because Qin Mo's speed was too fast. Now, after being replayed, people realized how beautiful Qin Mo's operation was and how fast his hand speed was. Under the dazzling silver screen, technical movement, and every attack had a purpose. How well did he know each skill to be able to do this? The Supreme Alliance's captain, who they had been yelling about, only knew how to run away, had done so many things without them knowing. Another surprising thing was that he didn't die at all. And he never went back to the city. He only relied on the health bags along the way and Shui Yaoyao's healing to KO the whole team. The most valuable player that couldn't be refuted. Seeing such a result, everyone shut up. The expressions of the fans, who originally wanted to argue, were obviously frozen. Shuji lowered his head, clenched his hands, and pressed his thin lips into a line. But now he didn't have the right to be angry. The obvious gap was there. He did kill 4 times, but he didn't have a single assist. But what about the opponent? 10 times? Shuji had thought that the teenager was the best in the Supreme Alliance. Now it didn't seem so. That man didn't talk much from beginning to end. He just stood there, with a handsome and noble side profile. He thought he was just a soft-footed shrimp. He didn't even care about the captain's warning and just rushed forward. But Shuji's chest had never been so depressed. If he could do it again, he would never be like this. What he regretted the most was underestimating the man named Qin Emo. The 2 reporters were speechless. Amidst the great silence, the members of Supreme Alliance took off their headphones and stood up. Perhaps it was because they were wearing the same uniform. He always gave people the feeling that he could sweep away an army of 1,000. When Qin Emo was walking back, Fujio was already standing there. Her left hand was in her pocket, and her right arm was raised high. She was smiling. Qin Emo extended his hand as well. There was a clap. The two of them clapped handsomely. Such a scene would only make one's blood boil. Those who saw it would never be able to feel that kind of shock as those who experienced it personally. Shui Yaoyao's palms were still sweating. A lot of people said that Almighty Qin's mechanics were amazing, but she didn't feel much about it. After all, she was a girl and couldn't understand it. Even when she played games in the past, she only felt that Almighty Qin's mechanics were amazing. But now her heart was beating. He couldn't suppress his throbbing for a long time. Everything stemmed from personal experience. Almighty Qin's every assist, every move, every defense, and every kill. Only she could see it clearly. So much so that after the game was over, her fingers were trembling. Not because of timidity, not because of her previous inferiority complex. But she had a firm belief. She wanted to stay in the Supreme Alliance, even if many people didn't think highly of this industry. Even if she would suffer all kinds of ridicule, she still wanted to stay. Even if she failed one day, she wouldn't regret having such a reckless youth. Compared with the solemn atmosphere of the Supreme Alliance, the atmosphere of Sakura Stream Team was too stiff. The agent probably hadn't come back to his senses yet. In his mind, this was just a small game, and he could easily beat the opponent. But the result? If this kind of thing got out, he didn't know how much face he would lose. The agent got angry. He walked in front of Yamaguchi and growled, "How on earth did you become the captain? Or are you too old, and your hand speed can't keep up? If you can't be the captain, let Shuji be. Look at your own record, have you ever killed a person?" Yamaguchi didn't speak, but his face was too silent. When his hair fell down, no one could see his expression clearly. Fujio listened to the admonishment and subconsciously raised her eyebrows. Because it was too quiet around them, every word that the agent said was clearly heard by everyone. Feng Yi, who was also the agent, glanced over here. "You can't even beat a small team. Yamaguchi, I am now officially informing you that you are not suitable to be the captain of Sakura Stream Team. I will report this to the club. If you insist on this, then I have to ask the manager to come forward and directly kick you out of Sakura Stream Team. This is also for the development of the team. After all, you are too old to play anymore." Yamaguchi didn't want to give up. "I have already said that Shuji should be the captain, but you said that now is not the right time. Look at the final result. You can't even beat a small team." Hearing that, Yin Weiyao only felt that it was very familiar. Once upon a time, he was also treated like this. "You are so old, why are you still playing esports? Look at yourself, can you still make money?" He thought he had forgotten all about it. In fact, the pain hidden in the bottom of his heart would all come out as long as he mentioned it. Why couldn't he play esports when he was old? There were many reasons for losing a game. Shouldn't he think about how to become stronger? Yin Weiyao didn't dare to look back. He was afraid that if he looked back, he would see his past self. He understood something that no one else could understand. Yamaguchi, the player he respected very much, couldn't escape the fate of being abandoned like this, and he couldn't do anything about it. However, at this time, two voices rang in his ears at the same time. One was cold and indifferent, and the other was smiling evilly. "Are you sure he is the reason for losing?" It was the captain and the captain. Yin Weiyao jerked his head up and looked in their direction. Chapter 357. Fujio put her arm on Chinmo's shoulder and said with a smile in her voice, "Since Sakura Stream Team doesn't want their main force, Brother Imo, how about we poach him?" Chin-Imo said faintly and looked at the agent. "How much is the price?" "Yamaguchi is a heavyweight player, so it shouldn't be low. You can ask for anything. If you can invite him, the Supreme Alliance will be very happy." This is directly talking about money? The agent really couldn't see how worthy Yamaguchi was to be poached. He opened his mouth wide and was stunned there. Yamaguchi was the most shocked. He raised his head and looked at his former opponent, and his eyes shook violently. It was not that he wasn't disappointed. In front of so many people, when the agent accused him, he had thought that the players he had coached would speak for him. But there was no one. The feeling of being abandoned was so obvious that he didn't even want to say a word. He could only say that the times were different. He still remembered when they used to compete, that group of old friends would look for reasons after they lost, and they would eat sushi and drink sake when they found the reason. But his old friends all left, and he didn't want to leave. He thought he could still play, and he wanted to stay because he liked this industry. It turned out that he was still too naive. Just when he thought he was going to be crushed by this sense of powerlessness. He didn't expect that the people who stood up for him were his opponent Chi Nemo and the silver-haired teenager who Shuji said he would teach a lesson. Enough. That was enough. Yamaguchi stood up, as if a heavy responsibility had been removed from his body. Sorry, I refuse. I still want to have another fight with the Supreme Alliance, a serious fight. However, I will not stay in Sakura Stream Team. I will go to a better team, so that I can be worthy of you. When he said this, his eyes were bright. The more he respected his opponent, the more his attitude was like this. Chi Nemo glanced at him and said only 4 words in a flat voice, "I'll wait for you." Then he wanted to turn around. As for the reaction of the agent and players of Sakura Stream Team, he didn't care at all. Fujio was still laughing. She said softly, "If it weren't for Captain Yamaguchi, my brother Mo would have killed all of you in seconds. Bro, before you teach people a lesson, look at the results. Did you see the assists? Also, Captain Yamaguchi destroyed 2 of our defense towers on the way. If it wasn't for the fact that we had to return to defend against your men, our last defense tower would have been taken down by him. If you don't know anything, ask more. Don't make yourself look so ignorant." If Fujio didn't say it, Sakura Stream fans wouldn't know what was going on. Now that he heard the reason, he understood everything. There were quite a few old fans among them, and they immediately stood up. His eyes looked at Yamaguchi. "Lord Yamaguchi, we'll go wherever you go." It wasn't much, but it was enough to shake people's hearts. It was not only Yamaguchi who felt touched, but also In Weiyao. The reason why they were able to persevere until now was because of God. Apart from the fact that it was their dream, it was also because the people who supported them were still around. Although there was only a little bit of light. However, as long as these people were still around, they had the motivation to continue forward. And on Sakura Stream's side. Chapter 358. That agent didn't expect this situation. He said those words just to let Yamaguchi know his position, but now, looking at those condemnations from all directions. Especially when there were reporters standing in front of them, as if they wanted to write this scene into the news. He only felt that the sweat on his forehead was about to come out, and then he said softly, "Yamaguchi, you know, I don't mean that. It's just that the result this time is not good. Don't talk about leaving so easily. Your contract is still there, and it's not good for anyone." Obviously, the agent was telling Yamaguchi not to make trouble. But this time, Yamaguchi, who had always been patient, couldn't bear it anymore. "I will pay the liquidated damages, and from now on, I will have nothing to do with Sakura Stream Club." Fujio heard that and looked at Yamaguchi seriously. "Captain Yamaguchi, let my brother Mo pay. It doesn't matter if you don't join the Supreme Alliance. Our family is also a club. Within a year, we have sent countless esports elites to China, such as me. So you can consider joining me, and the treatment is..." Yamaguchi looked at the youngster. Before he finished his words, he was dragged away by Chin Mo by the back of his collar. That indifferent and noble voice could be heard faintly. "Countless esports elites? Such as you? Oh, besides you, who else is trained by the He clan? Yao Yao, Baby Feng, Uncle In, Brother Mo, you can't not see them." Fujio was dragged like that, still trying to move Yamaguchi. "Captain Yamaguchi, you also saw that among the players who just played, there was our He clan army. I welcome you here at any time." Yamaguchi. I always feel that the youngster is not looking for people to join, but more like promoting a product. After listening to Fujio, he went straight to the point. 2 are self-taught, and 1 is a top-notch player. He just joined the He clan the day before the game. Have you trained him before? Fujio felt that the Almighty was tearing down her stage and not cooperating with her at all, which was really not good. So, she hooked up her lips and smiled. "Even if it's only me, it's worth countless people." "Little Fujio." Chin Mo let go of his hand and stopped. Fujio finally saved her collar. She tidied it up and didn't even look up. Brother Mo, is that your nickname for me? Hearing this, Chi Mo turned his head, his left hand empty, and he gently patted the youngster's face. If you don't shut up, I'm going to be even more intimate with you. He was threatening her again. Fu Jiu felt that she couldn't live with this anymore. She was just about to go over and flirt with him. But she couldn't resist his next sentence. Your eyes are still a little red, where are the eye drops? It's in my pocket. Fu Jiu felt that she was being too obedient. Perhaps it was because he was rarely taken care of. Once he had a taste of it, he felt that he could calm down. In Weao stood at the side, his eyes unmoving. After noticing that Uncle Ian was looking at her, Fu Jiu tilted her head and smiled, as if she didn't need to say anything. Ian Weao paused for a moment, then laughed along with them. A large part of the reason why the captain stood out this time was that the current Yamaguchi was very similar to him in the past. I don't remember who said that if you are injured, don't give up. Let those injuries become your armor in battle. Chapter 359. It wasn't that he didn't envy them, but he knew that his position wasn't there. Yamaguchi looked at the way Supreme Alliance got along with each other from afar. His eyes were full of light. He took off his Sakura Stream jacket and walked away. The reporters were still holding their cameras to record this scene. Sakura Stream would be discredited this time. After the photos were posted on the internet, it attracted a lot of domestic teams to watch. After all, it was different from Tokyo. Even if Supreme Alliance didn't enter the national top 4, everyone knew their strength. Although this ability is strong, it is not as good as Xiangnan. This was a very pertinent comment given by a retired esports player. No one from Xiangnan responded, but some other team members expressed their agreement. Because on the next day, another video appeared on the internet. It was the friendly match between Xiangnan and Sakura Stream. It was the same 5v5, but Xiangnan only had 2 deaths, while the other side had 13 deaths. The numbers were enough to prove how strong the Xiangnan team was. In contrast, Supreme Alliance's result was not so beautiful. There is a gap when there is a comparison. Supreme Alliance is still a little bit worse. Take the number of kills, Xiao Taiying 7 kills and 10 assists, while Almighty Qin 3 kills and 10 assists. It seems that the hand injury has a certain impact on Almighty Qin's performance. Such a result is not so good for ordinary people in the national competition, but for Almighty Qin. It seems that this year's national champion will be given to Xiangnan again. Based on the current situation, that's right. There would be some people who made comments on the internet to make advance announcements, which were usually based on data analysis. But they forgot one thing. When Supreme Alliance was fighting against Sakura Stream, Spadesy didn't appear, and the opponent's strong player, Yamaguchi, was still there. When Xiangnan was fighting against Sakura Stream, Yamaguchi had already announced his withdrawal from the club. But it was also a good thing that the opponent didn't send the strongest lineup. But it was not certain who would win in the national competition. Because Shui Yaoyao always believed that the young man sitting in front of her was the biggest key to whether Supreme Alliance could win the national competition. When the plane took off, the blue sky of Tokyo was left behind. They returned with honor. This was an experience that Shui Yaoyao had never experienced before. Fu Jiu was still next to Qin Mo. Fu Jiu hadn't realized that the Almighty was a kind-hearted man before, but ever since her eyes got inflamed, the Almighty had become much gentler to her. Although he would still occasionally be mean with his words, at least he wouldn't mock her intelligence. The way the two of them interacted with each other made Coco a little surprised. After all, at the beginning, when Captain chased after Spadesy, he really wanted to kill him. Who would have thought that things would turn out like this? Coco tilted his head and glanced at his captain, who was applying eye drops to Fu Jiu's handsome face. He still felt that this world was a bit too fantastical. Usually, when two people with the same distinct personality and different personality, there would usually be conflicts. So, it was because heroes cherished heroes. After Coco gave himself a convincing excuse, he turned his head away. He was afraid that if he saw too much, he would overthink things. It was all the fault of those CP jokes on Weibo that were too realistic. She always gave him a sense of immersion. Chapter 360. The two of them didn't feel anything. It was just their personalities. Being with the right person, anything was easy, so they didn't feel like they were showing off their love. Fu Jiu closed one eye, trying to avoid the stinging pain. Qin Mo casually turned the young man's face over. "Don't hide." Fu Jiu swore that this was the best time she had ever been urged when her eyes were inflamed. In fact, it was true. The redness in her left eye had disappeared, and only the corner of her eye was a little itchy. If it weren't for the eye drops, she wouldn't have felt the inflammation. Fu Jiu looked very obedient after applying the medicine. After all, her looks and hair color were there. Lin Feng looked back and touched his chin. "Did you notice that little spade's skin is very good? It's different from ours. It looks very delicate up close." As he said this, Lin Feng wanted to poke Fu Jiu's face. But before his fingertips could touch the young man, he was fixed on the spot by an indifferent gaze. That gaze was very oppressive. Lin Feng froze. He didn't offend the captain, did he? Why was the captain looking at him like that? Yun Hu was smarter. He reached out and pulled Lin Feng's wrist back. "Don't you want to drink your Coke?" "Drink." Lin Feng drank his Coke while looking at Fu Jiu, who had her eyes closed. Still too tender, even more tender than a girl. Hearing this, Shui Yaoyao raised her head abruptly. Fu Jiu closed her eyes and laughed evilly. "Don't worry, Almighty Lin. As the beauty of the team, you are also very tender." That elongated "oh" made everyone in the team burst into laughter. "Yeah, Lin Feng, you are still talking about little Spade. Look at yourself. You are so beautiful. Didn't the talent in your department write you a love letter? Take it out and have a look." F***ck off. That cataract, I don't look like a girl at all, damn it. Fu Jiu interrupted. "You look like a girl everywhere." Lin Feng. "Captain, control little Spade." Qin Mo glanced at him and said indifferently, "I don't care." Lin Feng was dumbfounded. Fu Jiu smiled happily. Lin Feng decisively turned his head away. He couldn't PK in real life, so he would have to rely on external forces in the future. Fu Jiu was originally quite obedient, but after being provoked by Lin Feng, she was more or less energized. She wanted to open her eyes and say something. Qin Mo tilted his head when he saw the movement beside him. He reached out and put the youngster's hat on, his voice deep and pleasant. "You want to mess around again, H?" Fu Jiu leaned back with the corners of her mouth curling up slightly. She looked like she was very obedient. Shui Yaoyao let out a sigh of relief. She was afraid that the topic would continue. His Highness Jiu's skin was really too good. Fortunately, there were quite a few boys like this in the school. After all, there were more gays now, and many guys had started to apply skincare products. But there was no one as handsome as Highness Jiu. They were all very feminine. Highness Jiu, on the other hand, was very handsome, especially when she had seen Highness Jiu fight with others. That kind of ruthlessness could more or less reduce people's suspicions of Highness Jiu. However, how long could this peace last? After returning to Rivertown, they would begin the National League. This meant that he would have to go to another city to participate in the regional competition in the 3 northeastern provinces. At that time, he would not be able to avoid staying in the same room as others. The others were fine, but if it was Almighty Qin. Chapter 361. Back in Jiang City. Fu Jiu had just woken up, and her silver hair was still sticking up. Her left hand was subconsciously rubbing the corner of her eye, and a pure black school bag was hanging on her right shoulder. That lazy, beautiful young man attracted a lot of cheers as soon as he appeared. "There he is. F***ck, it's really my big Spade. Looks like the news is right. If you want to take a photo, hurry up." "Where's Almighty Qin?" "I want to take a photo of Almighty Qin." "I want to take a photo of both of them." It was different from the silence when Supreme Alliance left. This time, it seemed like someone had gotten the news that they were going back to China. Many fans had been waiting at the airport since morning. Anyway, there were only 3 flights from Tokyo, so they would be able to make it. Finally, their hard work paid off. As soon as Fu Jiu came out, their eyes lit up, Not to mention the dozens of people in the same uniform lined up behind her. What a feeling! The girls were very excited, and in an instant, a group of people rushed over. Fujio paused and turned back to look at Chinemo. What was going on? It was this kind of slow reaction right after waking up that made people's blood boil. Looking at the Almighty when there's a problem, I give full marks for that look. Is my spade still in a daze? Look at his blank face, huh? What do you know? He's always like this. Hearing people talking about her in such a way, Fujio curled up her lips slightly. She opened her long legs and walked over to those dozens of girls. She was both seductive and cool. Too aggressive. That tone, it was incomparable. Shu, be good, be quiet, or you'll disturb others. Let me tell you something in secret. Since the Almighty hasn't come, you can say that the Almighty is He, and I'll give you sweets, Fujio said as she looked back, still smiling. Those dozens of girls had never seen the young man so closely before. Previously, they had only seen him in pictures on the internet. Even in game videos, they only showed the game scenes. Spade Z was really handsome and gentle in this way. What should I do with the feeling of being electrocuted? Their hearts were beating so fast. But for them to say that the Almighty was a slave, they really couldn't do it. Just as the girls were in a dilemma, Chin-Emo walked over. Without a word, he dragged Fujio behind him like he was dragging a sack. Then he looked sideways at Feng Yi and said, I'll leave this to you. Don't worry. Feng Yi's ability to socialize is showing. But this time, it was easier to settle. It was all because of the young man's performance. It was obvious that these girls were still intoxicated. When the aunties at the airport saw this scene, they thought that some fans were picking up celebrities. But what was praiseworthy was that these fans were not like what they had seen before. They were either very noisy, or they were so excited that they almost fainted, making it inconvenient for others, and they even had to dispatch security guards to maintain order. Not bad. The aunties thought that Fujio was the obvious one, and they glanced at the youngster. He even felt that when he had nothing to do, he could go home and do some research and watch the TV series that this young man had acted in. It was a beautiful misunderstanding. An ordinary girl like Shui Yaoyao would never have imagined such a scene. Chapter 362. It was a uniform sound. People in the airport couldn't help but look back. Because they were all girls with good manners, with youthful and firm eyes. It didn't make people feel noisy, but they wanted to stop and see what was going on. Among those fans, someone even smiled at Shui Yaoyao, waving a sign with the word Yao on it. Shui Yaoyao paused. So this was the feeling of being recognized. For too long, she had been called fat, poor, and eccentric. Even if she had dreams, the neighbors would only laugh at her. Originally, she would always be in that darkness. Shui Yaoyao looked up at the tall and straight figure walking in front of her. Sunshine, justice, are they finally coming? Of course, there would be people taking photos of Fujio and Chin-Emo, especially when the two of them were walking together, and one of them was holding the other's collar. Weibo cried again because of their cuteness. Is the Almighty going to pack up Big Spade and bring him home? I really envy the girls at the scene. Isn't this scene too loving? When the people at the scene pass by, I just want to say Big Spade is so handsome, and I will never say that Big Spade is the one on the bottom. Good attack, I'm about to be conquered. Come on, give me some blood. It was because of this popularity that couldn't be suppressed no matter how hard it was suppressed. The bad comments about Supreme Alliance were suppressed little by little. Manager Feng was in this line of work, so he knew when to release the right news. Some people who didn't understand the situation of the game and easily made assessments, such as how Supreme Alliance might not be able to enter the top 4 of the National League this time, weren't suitable for a team that had just won to listen to such unrealistic judgments. Supreme Alliance did have many problems. For example, the new team members hadn't gotten used to each other yet, and some of their adaptability hadn't been mastered yet. But these weren't problems for Feng Yi. The most precious thing for a growing team was to keep the original heart. And Feng Yi believed that as long as Supreme Alliance had Chin-Emo, they would never lose. What's more, they had Spade Z now out of the airport. There was a special business car waiting for them. After all the players got in the car, the reporters arrived. What's going on? Lin Feng felt that something wasn't right here. Coco, who was still replying to messages, opened the Weibo he saw. I think it's because of these comments. Lin Feng took a look and raised his eyebrows. Are they all saying that we can't compare with Xiangnan? Yeah, probably because of this result. When Coco finished his sentence, everyone on the bus saw Xiangnan's numbers. The atmosphere suddenly became much quieter. Fu Jiu leaned back and looked at Chinamo. The Almighty's face didn't change at all. It was as if these things didn't affect him at all. 70%? Chapter 363. Fu Jiu leaned back and said faintly, I've played with the Almighty a few times. Brother Mo has always been the main attacker, and assists are just a matter of convenience. I think this time, he's been assisting in order to coordinate with everyone. When I'm up, I can change the strategy. Was that so? The Supreme Alliance members looked over. The captain didn't refute, which meant that Little Spade's guess was all right. Fu Jiu felt a little strange, and her beautiful eyebrows lifted. You've been in the team with the Almighty for 2 years, and you don't know that he's the main attacker? Lin Feng and Coco looked at each other, and they didn't know what to say. Yunhu said, because the team needs it, so the captain has been assisting in the past 2 years. In other words, the Almighty had never played what he was best at. Because the team needed it. After hearing this answer, not only Fu Jiu paused, but everyone else's expression changed too. You never told me. Lin Feng glanced at Yunhu, his eyes wavering. Yunhu was calm. I only realized it after watching a short video of Captain and Little Spade playing wild games. It turns out that Captain's main attacker is better. Lin Feng still wanted to say something, but no matter what he said, he felt as if his throat was blocked. It turned out that Captain had done so much without them knowing. Chinamo was very calm. You seem to be very touched? The big men of the Supreme Alliance nodded in unison. Chinamo smiled. In that case, everyone should add an hour of hand speed practice every day. You can't just talk about being touched. Lin Feng, Yunhu, Coco, Fatty, and the others. Sure enough, you can't be too touched by Captain. The true nature of a businessman, an evil capitalist. Wait a minute, other than when Captain and Little Spade were playing in the wilderness, there weren't any videos. That means that the other teams don't know that Captain will be the main attacker in the future, right? Lin Feng's mind was finally enlightened for once. Feng Yi sat in the passenger seat, turning back at the right time, revealing his fox's tail. Now do you understand why my eyes lit up the moment I saw Little Spade? I was determined to poach him over. His hand speed is the most suitable for Almighty Qin. We have to keep this a secret. Once the National League starts, those people will know that their so-called predictions were bullsh*t. Feng Shang knew his brother well. His brother didn't usually talk like this. Today, he was really high. After knowing the reason, the members of the Supreme Alliance all had mixed feelings. For the past 3 years, the captain had been asking them to practice hand speed. This was probably the reason. He wanted to find someone to cooperate with him. But in the end, they didn't think that far ahead. Until that youngster appeared. No wonder Captain changed so much. Everyone's doubts were finally dispelled. They had been wanting to ask that question for a long time. What about the captain's severe mysophobia? Everything was fine after meeting Little Spade. He wouldn't even touch eye drops, let alone give them to others. If it was in the past, they would never have dared to imagine such a thing. But now, their captain was acting so naturally and elegantly. They really felt like they were in a state of confusion. However, after listening to Manager Feng's explanation today, they all understood. Chapter 364. Originally, this matter should have ended here. After hesitating for a long time, Coco whispered to Chinamo, "The Cali team has been speaking up for us. Captain, about last time, please don't be angry." Chinamo didn't answer, just glanced at him. That glance made Coco understand that on this issue, it wouldn't be so easy to mediate. The Cali team was still thinking of inviting the Supreme Alliance out for dinner, saying that they wanted to welcome them back. After all, they had won against Sakura Stream Team, so they could vent their anger. The Cali team first contacted Coco. After all, they were familiar with each other. But unexpectedly, Coco replied to them, "It's not convenient." The little girl was happy. "Why not? Do you think it's embarrassing to let a girl treat you to dinner?" Coco didn't reply. The little girl sent another WeChat message. "How about this? Why don't you treat us to dinner to thank us for supporting you on your official Weibo?" Did they have to treat them to dinner because they supported them? Coco was a little speechless. Plus, the captain's attitude was very obvious, so it was really hard to reconcile the last time. "Please thank Sister Lioli and the others for me, but we really can't eat together again after all when we were in Tokyo. Let's wait for some other time, then we can get together again." The little girl was unhappy when she heard this. "Coco, we like you and want to treat you, but you are a group of men, are you not giving us face?" Coco felt that there was no way to communicate, so he simply closed WeChat. Who knew that this matter wouldn't end? The little girl was very angry. "He didn't give us the honor, saying that after all, when we were in Tokyo, I guess it's because of that young Master Fu." "I think so too. How narrow-minded can he be? He's already making things difficult for us over such a small matter." Before on Weibo, one of his fans told Almighty Chin to stop associating with him. "I think he was right. This person is really disgusting. If he wasn't from the Supreme Alliance, I would have already found someone to deal with him." What a joke. Supreme Alliance is too much. We like them so much but they still act like this. At this moment, Lioli walked over and glanced at them. Her voice was gentle as she said, "This has nothing to do with the Supreme Alliance. What was our relationship with the Supreme Alliance in the past and what is it now? It's obvious that there are external factors involved." "Captain, don't tell me you don't have a solution? Although the He family's company is doing well, it can't be compared to the third generation of Jiang City." Someone started to come up with an evil plan. Lioli smiled and did not say anything else. However, her darkened eyes indicated that what she was about to do next was not good. "Forget it, there's no need to get the third generation Red to help. Even if some people like Spade Z's maneuvers, they won't like him as a person. He doesn't leave any leeway in his actions. If an MMO player can't even handle such comments, then what's the point of playing MMO? Isn't it the same for all professions? If you're being criticized, then you just have to endure it." In fact, when Lioli said this, she was very clear in her heart. Some people's liking is too superficial. Chapter 365. Then shouldn't we do something? That girl is still not convinced. Lioli didn't mind. "If you guys are really angry, you can open a few Smurf accounts and go to Spade Z's official account to make him unhappy. Those young people definitely won't accept the way he dealt with Black last time. If you guys say that, they will definitely respond to you." "Will that work?" Lioli laughed. "For some children, they must like others for them to like them. Once they are managed, they will have resentment in their hearts. They won't care about the nature of the matter, and they still feel wronged. This is a chance for you to vent your anger. What about Supreme Alliance? Captain, we don't want to be hated for no reason. Spadesy came and it became like this, really? I don't want to say anything." Lioli put away her bag, and her long hair fluttered. "Don't worry, if you can't go through Coco, there are other ways. Once the misunderstanding is cleared, everything will be fine. Just remember to find that person." Hearing this, the Cali team members were instantly energized. They applied for 3 or 4 alternate accounts and started browsing under Fujio's official account. First, there was a post like this. "It's not good to keep creating hype. I like Spade Z very much, and I hope Big Spade can focus on improving his hand speed instead of always following Almighty Chin. Personal advice, you can ignore it. Good luck." 10 minutes after the post came out, the management deleted it. Once the post was deleted, it was a big deal. These people finally had an excuse. "Management, come out. Let me ask you, why did you delete my post?" Originally, this matter was not a big deal. But it was this sentence that planted the seeds of hidden dangers in public opinion that would slander Spade Z in the future. At this time, Fu Jiu had just arrived home, and little butler Chen Xiaodong rushed over. "Young master." Because the little butler looked so serious, Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows with one hand holding her school bag. "What's wrong?" "You and Almighty Qin." Chen Xiaodong felt that this kind of thing was too hard to say. After all, when he looked at Weibo, that bed photo was very clear. "You guys didn't really do it, did you?" Fu Jiu reached out and smacked him on the head. "Don't just let your imagination run wild. We are going to the competition." With that, she threw herself on the sofa and looked around. "Where's my mom?" Chen Xiaodong covered his forehead and breathed a sigh of relief. "Madam knows that you are coming back today and is rushing back. You don't know how busy Madam has been recently. Many people want to find our family for a joint venture, saying that they think he has a good future." Hearing Chen Xiaodong's words, Fu Jiu paused for a moment before asking with a chuckle, "What about Fu Zhongyi?" "Nothing?" "Young master, why did you mention that person all of a sudden?" Chen Xiaodong had a disgusted look on his face. Fu Jiu picked up the teacup and took a sip. "Nothing, just asking." Now that the He clan was developing so well, it was impossible for the other party to not make a move. She did not believe that her scum father still had any feelings for them. Even if Fu Zhongyi didn't make a move, Third would have probably blown pillow talk. Chen Xiaodong didn't mind at all. Who knows? It's been a few days and they haven't shown themselves. "You didn't show your head?" Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. This wasn't the style of that three. Chapter 366. "Young master, what are you thinking about?" Chen Xiaodong tilted his head and asked. Fu Jiu stood up and grabbed her bag. "Nothing, I'm going upstairs to rest." Chen Xiaodong didn't understand. Ever since he came out of the hospital, his young master had been so secretive. He seemed to like staying in his room. Was he going to play games again? This time, Chen Xiaodong was wrong. After Fu Jiu entered her room, she didn't play games. Instead, she opened her laptop. Her slender fingers pressed on it, and the screen turned on. It was the letter Z written in black. Ever since she joined the Supreme Alliance, she hadn't done anything like this. After all, with the Almighty watching her, it wasn't suitable for her to attack any websites. Every hacker had their own unique methods. The reason why the Almighty hadn't figured out that she was Z was because she had changed her methods for Director Zhang's incident. But if she did it a few more times, she wasn't sure if the Almighty would notice anything. After all, back then she was caught off guard by the Almighty at Fifth Avenue, and that person was very sure that she was a woman. This was the first time she had encountered such a situation where her identity was exposed. And the Almighty was clearer than she thought about her style of doing things as Z. Not hurting the innocent. Not hurting the weak. That was what she had been telling herself all along. In this world, there were too many helpless truths that were covered by wealth and public opinion. Some things couldn't be handled perfectly by the police alone. And some people were suppressed, and they couldn't say anything about their grievances. Fu Jiu raised her eyes and looked at the gradually darkening night sky outside. She would return to Fifth Avenue after solving the problem with the Fu family. This was because she knew better than anyone that even if one liked peace and quiet, there were some things that could only be maintained if one took action. Just like the Fu family now. Fu Jiu looked at the documents that she had hacked. She lifted the corner of her mouth, and there was a hint of coldness in her eyes. She knew that San wouldn't be so obedient. Sure enough, he was plotting against the shareholders. He wanted all the shareholders to force her mother to return the shares? Fu Jiu curled her thin lips. Knowing that she couldn't get the villa, she wanted her son to be the general manager? Although she didn't care about the title of Young Master Fu. However, that third party seemed to have forgotten who the original owner of this company was. 9. He Honghua's energetic voice came from outside the house. Fu Jiu moved her fingers, quickly exited the page, and closed the notebook. The timing was just right. "Mom, what's wrong?" Fu Jiu turned the chair around, and that handsome face faced He Honghua's. He Honghua's face was flushed. She pinched her Jiu. "You've lost weight again. You must not be used to the food in Tokyo. Mom will cook something delicious for you later." What was wrong with his eyes? As expected of his biological mother, she could see the problem with just one look. Fu Jiu turned her head away and held He Honghua's hand. She chuckled and said, "I'm fine, it's just a slight infection. I've been taking medication for the past 2 days, and I'll be fine by tomorrow or the day after. Then I'll eat something to calm myself down today. It must be because I've been staring at the computer for too long that it caused a reaction," He Honghua said. Chapter 367. A call from the Almighty? Why didn't he call her cell phone? As Fu Jiu thought about this, she touched her pocket and realized that her phone was turned off. When he went downstairs to answer the phone, Chen Xiaodong and He Honghua were basically standing on the left and right. Their expressions of, "I didn't want to eavesdrop, I'm just passing by," were very obvious. Fu Jiu laughed. She put one hand in her pocket and picked up the receiver. "Hello, brother." The Almighty sounded like he was outside. Even through the phone, he could hear the faint sound of music. "Did you use the eye drops?" Fu Jiu paused. She had indeed forgotten about this. Qin Mo was still holding the cigarette in his hand. Originally, it had been quieter outside the room, but when he heard that there was no response, he frowned. Behind him, a figure walked over with a smile on his face. "Who are you calling? You even came out to make the call." In all these years, they had never seen Qin Mo take the initiative to call anyone. His good brothers found it interesting and wanted to find out more. Qin Mo glanced at his friend and pretended he didn't exist. He continued, "Who else is beside you?" "Chen Xiaodong and my mom." Fu Jiu chuckled. "They are eavesdropping on my phone call. It's probably from Brother Mo, and they find it strange." Chen Xiaodong and He Honghua both froze. The one who drank water almost choked, while the one who didn't drink water wailed in his heart. "Ojio, there are some things you should keep to yourself. Don't say it out loud." As Qin Mo listened, the corners of his mouth lifted. It seemed like it was always like this. The youngster's words were interesting. "Pass the phone to Auntie." "What are you doing?" Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. Qin Mo replied calmly, "What's the matter?" "Say hello." Fu Jiu thought it was about business, so she turned around and said to He Honghua, "Mom, come on. After listening for so long, Brother Mo wants to say hello to you." "Talk to her on the phone?" He Honghua's expression froze. It wasn't that she hadn't seen young Master Qin from Jiang City before. But that was only at business gatherings. Gatherings like this also had different levels. Not to mention her, even Fu Zhongyi couldn't squeeze into young Master Qin's circle. She could still remember Fu Zhongyi holding a glass of wine and trying to get closer. He Honghua, on the other hand, did not have that kind of idea. Anyway, she knew her own appetite the best. Since they were not in the same circle, there was no need to put down their pride and force their way in. If that was the case, it would be too lowly. However, He Honghua was still shocked by the young man's aura. He Honghua came from the countryside, so she envied cultured people the most. Qin Mo, on the other hand, looked like a celebrity who exuded nobility from head to toe. He Honghua had thought that she would never have any contact with the Qin Corporation in this life. Who would have thought? "Is that Auntie?" The voice on the other side gave people a luxurious feeling. This made He Honghua feel like she was dreaming. She coughed heavily and put on the posture of a parent. "Yes." Qin Mo probably hadn't made such a call before, so he thought for a moment and said, "Auntie, I'm a bit rash with this call today, but I'm still worried about Fu Jiu. He overuses his eyes. It's best if Auntie can supervise him at home and make sure he doesn't use his computer or phone casually." Fu Jiu stood there with her hands in her pockets. She didn't know what the Almighty was talking to her mother about. Chapter 368. What's not a problem? Fu Jiu was still raising her eyebrows. He Honghua hung up the phone, and her expression was especially serious. "Madam, I'm here." Chen Xiaodong came over. He Honghua glanced at Fu Jiu first, and then said, "Confiscate all the electronic products on young master, and don't let him use the computer for the next 2 days, got it?" "Don't worry, madam. I'm here, and I won't let young master do anything wrong," Chen Xiaodong promised. Fu Jiu, What did the Almighty say to her mother that even her mother wanted to monitor her? Chinemo could probably imagine the young man's gloomy look on the other end of the phone after hearing the news, and the smile on his lips deepened. Han Feng, who was standing behind Chinemo, was stunned after seeing his expression. What's going on? He has a woman? Then tonight's game is going to be difficult. Han Feng frowned, but soon he laughed again. The small fights outside were probably not going to be a big deal. Let's wait for his sister to bring her people over. Han Feng whistled and followed him into the card bag. The people sitting inside were all from the military compound, and they were familiar with each other. But two of them were thrown into the army by their families when they went to university, and it was not easy for them to come back. They were definitely looking for their brothers to have a good time. But with Chinemo around, they wouldn't go too far. At most, they would drink in a nightclub. After all, they were all well educated. Everyone was different. Sitting in the card bag, some people couldn't wait and wanted to get close to them. Especially some girls who came out to play, they looked at people with hooks in their eyes. But these four people were strange. They didn't ask anyone out, and one of them just raised his glass to the girls with a smile on his face. As for the rest, they just sat there and discussed other matters. I heard you have a new sister. When are you going to bring her out? The one who asked this was one of the people who just came back from the army. His name was Jing Ran, and his calm look was indeed suitable to wear a military uniform. After hearing his words, Jiang Zhua, who was drinking, paused and said lazily, "There's nothing to see." Done. Han Feng glanced sideways. Don't be unhappy. I understand you. Your father gave half of his wealth to someone else for no reason. But that family is so poor that they don't have anything they want. I heard that they have an older daughter who is very fat. She's our junior from number 1 middle school. What's her surname again? Look at me, don't bother about those unimportant people. If her mother marries into the Jiang family, won't she be at your mercy? Hurry up and change your attitude. In a while, a beauty will come over and help us drive. How about that? Big brother treats you well, right? He knows that you're unhappy, so he found someone to warm things up. Jiang Zhua frowned, looking frustrated. They aren't as bad as you make them out to be. Yes, we really can't blame them. After all, anyone would cherish the chance to walk out of the slums. That man's words hit the nail on the head. Because of that, Jiang Zhua felt unhappy. Just as he was thinking about it, a voice came from the other side. Brother, if the four of you sit here, are you going to let the other guys live? The speaker was Han Feng's sister, Han Susu. She was dressed very beautifully, and it was the most eye-catching attire of the time. Chapter 369. She looked at Chinemo, who was sitting in the innermost area, and a faint smile appeared on her delicate and beautiful face. Han Susu watched from the side, curled her lips, and said in a low voice, "Look at you, it's too obvious." Lioli blushed and tried to suppress her shyness. "Don't say any more." "I won't say any more." Han Susu walked forward and said to Han Feng, "Brother, I've brought them here. If any of you drank, I can send you back." Han Feng smiled and said, "You can send them back as you see fit, but Chinmo's car is an off-road vehicle, so we have to find someone with good driving skills." "Then let Sister Lioli send them back." Han Susu pushed Lioli's back with her hand. "Sister Lioli is the most suitable person to send Brother Chin back. They all play esports and are both captains, so they can communicate in the car. Anyway, it was just a small matter. Brother Chin would definitely agree for her sake." At least, that was what Han Susu thought. She had heard some of the reasons. She even went to the official bar to take a look before coming here. It was enough to show that Spadesy was a narrow-minded person. And she had seen that prodigal son of the Fu family before. Even though he was the one making trouble downstairs every time, and they were sitting in the card bag. But for that kind of person, no one would have a good impression. Unexpectedly, that prodigal son also knew how to play games, and it was said that he was quite good at it. But so what? He had a bad character, so he couldn't enter their circle. Sister Lioli had always been interested in Brother Chin, and they were a good match. But because of some conflicts between teams, Brother Chin was angry with Sister Lioli now. That prodigal son was still manipulating them. Didn't he think about the relationship between them? Was it something he could manipulate? Han Susu didn't know the whole story, and all she knew was what the Cali team told her, so her perception was wrong. Chin Imo leaned over and put out the cigarette in the ashtray. His handsome face was indifferent, and he only said one sentence, "What's the point of you doing this?" 7 words, no more, no less. But it was enough to hear the coldness in it. This time, not only Han Susu, but also Lioli's face was embarrassed. However, she was already prepared before she came, so she didn't show it. Han Susu, on the other hand, was a little annoyed. She didn't understand why Big Brother Chin was so ungracious today. "Brother Chin." She still wanted to say something. Lioli pulled her back and said softly, "Forget it. You and I both know that young Master Chin values his teammates. At the end of the day, it was all because of that useless young Master Fu. It must be because that young Master Fu's heart was too dark. It was just a small argument, but he thought the worst of others. That's why he ended up like this. I really don't want to say anything more. Boring." Han Susu was so ignorant, and she didn't realize that there was anything wrong with it. Compared to Han Susu, Han Feng, the elder brother, was much calmer. Even after seeing his brother's attitude, he had a feeling that something was wrong today. Sure enough, Chin Imo stood up with one hand in his pocket. Han Feng. Han Feng subconsciously raised his head, only to see that there was no warmth in his friend's eyes. Chapter 370. Wait a minute, you drank the most just now. How can you drive in this state? Han Feng was anxious to get him to stay. How about I find a designated driver for you? Chin Imo stopped and looked at Han Feng. Finally, the coldness in his eyes faded a little. I don't need a designated driver, I'll find someone to pick me up. That's fine. Han Feng was almost sure that there was a reason behind this. He didn't want Yu Lao to get himself into trouble this time. Looking for Secretary Liang? I have his number here. Chin Imo took out his phone and dialed a number. Not him, someone else. I can see if that guy is obedient or not. Han Feng. So, why does it sound hard to describe? Who is it? Chin Imo didn't seem to want to hide it from anyone. He actually turned on the loudspeaker. After a few noises. Brother Imo, what exactly did you say to my mom? She won't even let me read her novels now. How am I supposed to spend the night? Chin Imo was speechless. Brother Imo, what did you say to my mom? She won't even let me read her novels now. It was that useless young Master Fu. The Kelly team's members all lowered their eyes. Lioli's hands clenched even tighter. She finally found a chance to send almighty Chin home. Gone just like that? Fu Jio was still sighing. Brother Imo, let's talk about trust in each other. If you look at me like that, I'll feel like I'm in a police station. You've been in a police station before? Chin Imo said as he took a puff of his cigarette. Fu Jio thought of the scene from her previous life and shook her head decisively. No, it's just an analogy. I think Brother Imo can understand it better with this analogy. After all, we are all so handsome, so there shouldn't be any problem communicating with handsome guys. Someone couldn't help but laugh. It was Jiang Zhua. He was still holding a glass of wine in his hand. He looked at Chin Imo as if he was wondering who this guy was and why his words were so interesting. Is there someone here? Fu Jio had always been good at listening. Chin Imo replied, yes. Put it on loudspeaker. Fu Jio understood. Brother Imo, you're playing outside? But my electricity is banned at home. What a difference. Jiang Zhua heard this and laughed even harder. Chin Imo glanced at him and then lowered his eyes to the phone. You have a lot of resentment? My place is indeed very fun. If you come and take a look, you'll find it interesting. In front of so many people, Chin Imo actually chatted with the youngster like this, using the phone. However, the youngster didn't seem to care that he was on speakerphone. An evil smile came over. Brother Imo, if you want to ask me out, you can just say it. We can go grab some skewers at this hour. We can talk about the meat later. I drank some wine and I need someone to help me. Chin Imo arched a brow. Are you coming? Fu Jio chuckled. Address? Specific address. I don't have a phone on me right now. You can come out when I'm almost there. It's your favorite nightclub. It's very close to the Fu family. Chin Mo heard the youngster say something else before hanging up. The atmosphere in the card booth changed. Everyone was looking at Chin Mo. Han Susu didn't expect Big Brother Chin to be so close to that young Master Fu. On the other hand, Jiang Zwe knew that Chin Mo had done this for a reason. He was trying to boost the reputation of the person on the other end of the phone. Chapter 371. The awkward atmosphere in the card bag lasted until Chin Mo stood up again. He raised his hand to take his coat, and his voice was very calm. That guy is almost here. I'll go first, you guys go ahead. Wait, let's go together. Han Feng also wanted to see what kind of person that loser young Master Fu was, and why Chin Mo treated him so differently. A group of people walked out of the nightclub, and it was not inconspicuous. After all, the women were beautiful and the men were handsome. Many people looked in their direction. The weather outside was really cold. The closer it was to winter, the thicker the fog became. Even people could hear the white fog when they spoke. Han Feng and Jiang Zwe came out together. The cold air blew on them, and they couldn't help but look behind them. Susu, you girls can go in first. We can send your brother Chin here. Han Susu didn't want to go in. She wanted to see that loser young Master Fu's face. Of course, Han Feng had to suppress the matter and repeated, "Go back." Han Susu wanted to say something, but she found that their car was stopped by a figure. The figure was on a skateboard, and she couldn't see his face clearly. She didn't know what he was doing, but he was swinging back and forth. The sound of the skateboard successfully attracted everyone's attention. A group of people looked over there. Han Susu was stunned. Not only her, but even the members of the Kali team also changed their expressions, and they clenched their fingers. But Chin Mo walked over there. "What are you spinning around for?" "Over here." That figure turned around, and a car happened to pass by. The lights shone on that figure's face, and the halo spread out. Silver hair, black eyes, red lips, white teeth, and clear eyes. That was Fujio's handsomeness. That was Fujio. The youngster was still on the skateboard, and he was wearing a black hooded jacket. He stopped in front of Chin Mo with a swoosh, and his posture was very cool. "It's warm to spin around. I don't have a car, so I can only use this to pick Brother Mo up. Hey, my prince, can we go home now?" When Fujio raised her eyebrows and said, "My prince," Han Susu didn't know why her heart skipped a beat, and she was a little stunned. She just thought that the youngster was so handsome. However, no matter how handsome he was still trash. Han Susu quickly came back to her senses, and the way she looked at Fujio changed. She lifted her chin, and the provocation was obvious. Fujio had no choice but to look past Chin Mo and at the group of people behind him. No wonder the Almighty said it was interesting. This scene was indeed interesting. Fellowship? Fujio tilted her head and asked Chin Mo 4 versus 4 was just right, but the Almighty didn't seem to like socializing. Chin Mo's expression didn't change, his voice calm. "Someone thinks he's smart. Don't bother, let's go." "Oh." Fujio smiled faintly, thinking that whatever the Almighty said, she would do as he said. Anyway, she was here to take the prince home today. But, trying to be clever? After hearing these words, Lioli's smiling face felt a little painful, but she didn't do anything. She knew best when to stop her losses. Han Susu was not going to let it go. She stood on the spot and shouted, "Brother Chin's friend isn't going to say hello to us? Isn't that too rude?" This time, it wasn't Fujio who stopped, but Chin Mo. Chapter 372. Why do you want me to shut up? Han Susu couldn't say anything else after the word, "I." Not because of anything else, but because of the way Chin Mo looked at her. His eyes were extremely cold. "Why don't you continue?" Chin Mo smiled, but his eyes seemed to be overflowing with black mist, so cold. When she was young, Han Susu was most afraid of Chin Mo like this. At that time, she didn't dare to get close to this person, and it was the same now. People who knew Chin Mo knew that when he smiled like this, it meant that he was really angry. Go on. Chin Mo walked over slowly. Let me hear what else you have to say. That kind of pressure seemed to freeze the surrounding air. Han Susu's eyes were red, but she didn't dare to be stubborn. As her brother, Han Feng also knew that today's matter was terrible. Chin Mo, my sister is still young. Eat more walnuts if you are young. Chin Mo's voice was still very calm. Han Susu didn't understand. Why did he want her to eat more walnuts? Fu Jiu watched from the side and sighed helplessly in her heart. Was he a high school student? How did he learn Chinese? He was so confused. However, not understanding the Almighty's poisonous tongue was also a kind of happiness. After all, no one wanted to know that they had a hole in their head and needed walnuts to fix their brains. Han Susu really didn't understand anything, but she knew who the culprit was. She looked at Fu Jiu immediately. It's all because of you. You're so good at manipulating people like this. Fu Jiu, she was just an onlooker from the beginning to the end, okay? She was lying. Fu Jiu couldn't stand white lotus flowers. She couldn't stand it in the past, and she couldn't stand it now. This was also a flaw in her character. She was brought out of the womb, and she couldn't change it. Fu Jiu swore that if the other party said one more word, she would vent all the anger from not being able to touch her phone for 2 days. Unfortunately, Chin Mo didn't give her this chance. He took another step forward and looked at Han Susu. Do you want to die? Han Feng saw that the situation was not right and shouted, Chin Mo, Susu is my sister. I know. As Chin Mo spoke, he glanced at Han Feng slowly. Then he swung his fist over and hit Han Feng's face heavily. His posture was fast and accurate, and there was wind in it. He didn't even give Han Feng a chance to recover. Bang! Han Feng leaned to the left. The members of the Cali team couldn't help but exclaim. Jiangzhou wanted to pull him away. However, she realized that Chin Mo didn't have the intention to continue after another hit. I don't hit women, but I can hit a woman's brother. Chin Mo stood tall as though there was no one around. His voice was cold, and it made Han Feng, who was about to retaliate, snap out of it. He cursed in a low voice, but he also knew that this time it was his side that was in the wrong, and it was especially wrong. There was nothing more to say. Han Feng just stood there and rubbed his cheeks. Everyone knew that Chin Mo didn't use all his strength. Otherwise, Han Feng would have fainted. They all came from the same courtyard, and they always fought together in school, so they all knew each other's skills. Han Susu was still unconvinced. Brother Chin, how did I offend you to make you treat my brother like this? It's all because of this Fu, swish. Chapter 373. Han Susu was shocked, and her eyes widened when she saw the skateboard rushing towards her. If Han Feng hadn't pulled her back, her knees would have been hit. Han Susu looked up and saw the youngster's posture of withdrawing his legs. Fu Jiu was smiling coldly. Sister, it's not good to curse. Also, people living in this world, if they don't even have the basic ability to distinguish, then don't come out and wander around. It's quite fun to be used as a gun. Green tea needs to be seasoned like you to be used. You've done a good job. As soon as these words came out, not only Han Susu, but also the members of the Cali team turned red and white. They looked at Fu Jiu as if they wanted to kill her. But Fu Jiu didn't seem to care at all, and her mouth was still half-curved. Han Susu was so angry that her chest hurt, but because Chin Mo was standing next to her, she didn't even dare to move. Han Susu was retarded, but it didn't mean that her brother was retarded. As soon as he saw Fu Jiu make a move, he knew that this person was not to be trifled with. From the beginning, the youngster had been standing there without moving or speaking. He could see that Fu Jiu wasn't afraid of their identities. Too many things could be seen from a person's eyes. Some people would naturally shrink back when they thought of their family background. But the youngster's eyes didn't show this, only indifference. Then why did the youngster wait until now to make a move? He probably couldn't bear it anymore. Han Feng glanced sideways at his good friend next to him, and his heart suddenly skipped a beat. He wanted to say something. Chin Mo knew that he was going to say something, but he just walked past him. At that moment, Han Feng knew that there was no hope. This time was Qin Mo's bottom line. If he did it again, not to mention making friends, the Han family would be finished. Han Susu still felt wronged, so she pulled her brother and asked him to vent her anger for her. Han Feng was really annoyed. Since when did his sister become like this? First, she provoked him, and then she had a bad mouth, as if she wanted to use her family's power to oppress others. But Han Susu didn't let it go. Brother, how could Brother Qin, how could he do this to us, that useless? Qin Mo was looking back at her with a cold expression, as if he was waiting for her to finish her words. Slap. Han Feng slapped her in the face. Han Susu froze on the spot. That kind of aftershock even made the Kali squad members tremble. Han Susu couldn't believe that her brother, who had always doted on her, would slap her in front of so many people. Tears kept rolling down her cheeks, but more than that she was angry at Fujio. Finally, she glared fiercely at him and ran away. Liuli, of course, wanted to be an angel who could heal people, so she immediately followed them. Now that the captain was leaving, the Kali squad would definitely follow. This time, Fujio even had a grudge with the Han family. What good could come out of this? As long as they stayed by Han Susu's side, there would be opportunities to deal with Fujio in the future. However, not everyone in the Han family was as stupid as Han Susu. After such an incident, how could Han Feng allow his sister to contact these people again? He looked at Qin Mo, his throat moving. I'll go take a look. Let's talk about this in the future. There's a misunderstanding. At that moment, Han Feng was really worried that Qin Mo would ignore him. Fortunately, Qin Mo was still rational. He replied calmly, okay. Chapter 374. Jiang's saw things clearly and walked to Qin Mo's side. Susu is naive. She will only believe what others say, and those people are her friends. I believe that after this, Han Feng will ask her to be more careful. Qin Mo's mind seemed to be elsewhere. He frowned and looked up and down at the young man who was using his skateboard not far away. Jiang's laughed. Then let's take a taxi back. He followed Qin Mo's gaze and said jokingly, as a prince, you should be more environmentally friendly. After all, someone is here to pick you up. Let's go. Qin Mo thought about it and found it a bit funny. Indeed, no one picked someone up with a skateboard. This was probably enough to make Jiang's laugh for a while. After a day of frustration, there was finally something interesting. Jiang's turned around with a smile and looked back at the two. One was cold and indifferent, and the other cool and handsome. They were both wearing pure black coats, but the young man's coat and hat had a circle of pure white fur around it. Qin Mo was wearing a British-style trench coat, standing there like a devil. The young man was walking towards Qin Mo. The two formed a sharp contrast, but they were both handsome and complemented each other. Jiang's remembered the last time he saw Fujio in the noisy cafeteria of No. 1 middle school. At that time, the young man kicked someone over with a face full of reckless handsomeness. He patted a pretty girl's face lightly and seemed to say, "Girl, it's not a big deal. Listen, I can torture you anytime. And even if I like men, I won't like that young Master Qin you mentioned. If he wants to come, I'll accompany him anytime." Jiang's still remembered that when Qin Mo heard those words, he only raised his eyes and glanced at the young man. Who would have thought that these two would be together? And they seemed to have a good relationship. Just like that, the nightclub was cleared. Fujio walked back with her skateboard and saw that Qin Mo was the only one left. He looked upset. The skateboard seems to be broken, and I hit the car. Qin Mo felt that the latter part of this sentence was the main point. He raised his eyebrows carelessly. Fujio's face was full of praise. A very domineering Land Rover. The license plate is awesome. 666. Great, it was his car. Qin Mo glanced over at the youngster. Fujio touched the bridge of her nose. I used a bit too much force just now. Fortunately, I didn't hit too hard. Then she smiled. It's just a little paint, so Brother Mo, you have to buy me a new board. This fellow. Qin Mo chuckled. I can buy a board for you, but before that, Can we talk about the paint first? A limited edition Land Rover's paint job. Fujio didn't want to think about the price. She said decisively, "Brother Mo, let's just mind our own business. It's more convenient. Let's go and get some skewers first." Peh. Chin Mo lifted his lips, his fingers flicking the skateboard the youngster was holding. "Are you going to take me to eat meat with this broken skateboard?" Fujio smiled faintly. "This board is big. It still can't fit two grown men." Just as he was about to smoke, he saw that the youngster's left eye was still a little red. He folded the cigarette and flicked it into the trash can. "Drive my car." Fujio pointed at herself. "I'm not old enough." One was drunk driving and the other was under 18, driving a Land Rover on the road? Although Fujio's driving skills were good, forget it. Chapter 375. Chin Mo rejected it in his heart. At least at the beginning. But he remembered that the boy was in his rebellious phase. So he just stood on it. Both feet. Fujio turned around and looked at Chin Mo. Chin Mo glanced at the young man's handsome face. It was very delicate. He raised his finger and flicked Fujio's cheek. "Got it? Turn around and look in front. If you don't skate well, both of you will die in a car accident." "How could that be?" "Trust the skills of an old driver." Fujio laughed for a while and got into a sliding position. But she saw that the person behind her didn't move. She couldn't help but say, "Brother Mo?" Chin Mo nodded, and his eyes deepened. Finally, he put his hand on the young man's shoulder. The distinct candy smell in his nose became stronger. It smelled good, and it was a little bit cold. They stood one in front of the other, and they were very close to each other. They were so close that their heartbeats seemed to be synchronized. Chin Mo had never been so close to anyone. Every time the young man skated with his left leg, there would be a gust of wind. That movement was really handsome, and it seemed like there wouldn't be any danger. Chin Mo looked down and saw the small silver vortex on the young man's head. He raised his eyebrows. "Didn't you say you were growing? Why aren't you growing taller?" Fujio heard this and gave a vague "hmm." She thought that he wasn't growing taller because all the nutrients had gone elsewhere. Chin Mo thought that his words were too direct and made the young man feel inferior. After all, although the young man was handsome, he wasn't tall. He thought about it and added, "Do more outdoor sports in the future. Boys are like this. They grow faster when they reach grade 12. She was a girl. Fujio replied silently. She skillfully bypassed the uneven ground in front of her and turned onto the main road. "Brother Mo, hurry up, we need to speed up." It wasn't early, but it wasn't even 10 o'clock. There was still a night bus on the road. On the other side of the street, besides the bright lights of the high-rise buildings, there were two very eye-catching figures. Two people skateboarding on the same board? No, it should be carrying people on a skateboard. Who on earth came up with this idea? Fujio's silver hair was too eye-catching. The people sitting on the bus who were yawning on the bus all perked up after seeing this scene. While the bus was waiting for the red light, everyone couldn't help but look out of the window. The youngster smiled and skateboarded past the car. The man standing behind the youngster was so handsome that it made people dizzy. Since both of them were wearing black jackets, it gave people the illusion that demons had come to the human world. It was a cartoon-like aesthetic impact. Everyone was stunned. What was going on? Are skateboarders so good-looking now? They weren't filming. Furthermore, how did they manage to skate on the same board? How did they do it? This might have been a little difficult for normal people, but these two people were very skilled, so they naturally knew how to balance their strength. That was why such a scene appeared. It's good to be young. Many people sighed as they watched enviously as the two figures disappeared into the thick fog. They could not help but think of their own youth. However, no matter how she thought about it, it didn't seem possible for such a handsome man to exist. Chapter 376. The place where they ate kebabs wasn't far from Fujio's house. It was just in an alley in Jiang City. In winter, not many people ate kebabs, but many people ate hot pot. After all, eating hot pot could keep people warm. But since there were foodies, there were stores that survived for foodies. It was cold outdoors, so it was the same indoors. It was warm indoors in the north, and this kebab's shop wasn't big. Inside, there was a big stove fire that only old people in Jiang City had the chance to see. It was very retro. Fu Jiu held up her skateboard. Qin Emo raised his eyebrows. This shop. Fu Jiu laughed. Don't be fooled by its ugly appearance. The meat is real, pure sheep. Nowadays, there were many adulterated things. Everyone knew that. This shop was different. It was an old couple who made the kebabs, and they were very particular about authenticity. So cold, so cold. Fu Jiu said as she pushed the door open and ran in. She finally looked like a high school student. Qin Emo followed behind her, and he did look like an otherworldly person. That was why when they came in, they were surrounded by a few people who had just finished playing games in the internet cafe. Those people weren't that old, so they ordered a table full of beer. When they saw Fu Jiu with a skateboard in her arms, they were stunned for a moment. Then, when they saw Almighty Qin, who was so honorable, they didn't even say anything and just looked over. Fu Jiu didn't care about the stares. She sat down and smiled at them. Sorry to bother you. 1 dozen Budweiser, 2 skewers and 2 tendons. We'll order the rest. Okay. Then the lady boss came out after taking the wine. Fu Jiu had been bored to death for the past 2 days. Her life without meat and alcohol was boring. Now that she saw Budweiser, she curled up the corner of her mouth. But before she could move, Qin Emo stretched out his hand and pressed down on the young man's wrist. His voice was very calm. Don't smoke and drink. Did you forget? Fu Jiu raised her head and reminded him, Brother Emo, you have to remember when you're not here. When I'm not here, Auntie will take care of you for me. Qin Emo was very calm. Fu Jiu heard that and instantly became listless. Then what should I drink? Qin Emo supported his chin with one hand and used the other to pick up the menu from the youngster. He glanced at it and said, egg soup. Fu Jiu. What kind of person would drink egg soup when eating skewers? Did he think she had never done skewers before? Or plain water? Qin Emo glanced at the youngster's expression lazily. Choose one. Such a choice. Fu Jiu was silent. Egg soup. All right. Qin Emo looked at the youngster and couldn't help laughing. 1 bowl isn't enough for you. Fu Jiu said seriously, there's still meat. I'm not a big eater. Beef and mutton belong to the hare. Qin Emo reached out and tapped the corner of the youngster's eye. Do you want to do it again? Wait a minute. Fu Jiu looked up at the handsome face in front of her. Did the Almighty mean that she should only drink egg soup? Where's the kebabs we agreed on? Qin Emo listened to the youngster's question and said calmly, I'll let you see the kebabs you want to see in a while. What else do you want to eat? You can order it and I'll help you eat. Fu Jiu paused and said, Brother Emo, you'll lose me if you're so two-faced. Do you know that? Qin Emo smiled and lifted his lips, looking very handsome. Chapter 377. Then shouldn't I thank you? Qin Mo's voice was very oppressive when he got closer. Fu Jiu wasn't afraid of him. She smiled and said, What? Brother Emo, are you finally going to marry me? If you are Brother Emo, you don't need a dowry. Qin Emo glanced at the young man, raised his hand, and put on Fu Jiu's hat. You should be glad that you are younger than me. Fu Jiu shook the hat on her head and watched the delicious skewers arrive. She could still smell the cumin on the skewers, which were a little burnt and dripping with oil. Who on earth proposed to eat skewers? Fu Jiu thought about it carefully and realized that it was her. She was speechless again. She had no choice but to turn her head and look at the lady boss. When will my egg soup be ready? Coming. The lady boss probably thought that the young man's depressed look was a little funny. She smiled so much that wrinkles appeared on her face. It made sense. Eating only egg soup at a place to eat skewers was indeed a little pitiful. Fu Jiu. Lady boss, your smile is too obvious. Qin Emo only smiled and didn't say anything. He sat in front of Fu Jiu and ate the skewers. In order to distract herself from the meat, Fu Jiu decided to ask something serious. Brother Mo, how many of the character's skills and equipment combinations in Hero do you remember? She wanted to know the Almighty's real strength so that she could cooperate with him. After all, Wild Games and the League were different. Chinamo put down his glass and said 2 words very casually, all of them. Fujio didn't say anything. The table next to them burst into laughter. Some were shaking their heads and some were shaking their heads. The general idea was that Chinamo had gone overboard with his bragging. Everyone who played Hero knew that there were a lot of characters and skills in the game, not to mention all kinds of equipment. How awesome was this guy to remember all of them? Even if he went online to search for guides, he wouldn't be lying if he didn't have all of them. Fujio also understood what they meant. She turned her head and smiled. She didn't care about these people. She believed that the Almighty didn't care either. But how? It wasn't a problem for her to remember the skills. But when to use those equipment and how to match them. These things depended on experience, didn't they? Otherwise, there wouldn't be those technical guides to teach newbies how to play the game. Chin-mo glanced at the youngster, replying leisurely, study the physical attack data of the equipment and the character before combining them. Do you want me to explain in detail? As soon as Fujio heard the word physics, she felt dizzy. No, this method doesn't suit me. The Almighty was indeed different. Who would rely on analyzing physical attack data to play a game? How were people supposed to continue working as technicians? Thinking of this, Fujio couldn't help but mutter, a straight-A student is so straight-A even when playing games. How are we supposed to live? Chin-mo listened to the youngster's voice, which was neither high nor low, and his smile deepened. The meat is here again. The subtext of that sentence was, you'll have something to watch again? Fujio instantly understood the Almighty's black-bellied intentions. She raised her eyebrows handsomely, leaned over, pressed the man's wrist, and took a bite of the meat skewer in his hand. Chapter 378. Chin-mo froze all of a sudden. No one could not. While he was happily eating the skewers in his hand, he suddenly saw a fair and clean face with fine hair, thick eyelashes, and light-colored lips on the right side of his face. At that moment, he felt an inexplicable itch in his heart. The feeling from skateboarding came back. It was like a fluffy feather rubbing against his whole body from his right cheek. The gamers who were eating skewers at the side all looked in their direction. *CK. What's going on? Did they drink too much? It was one thing to see their friends gay in the game, but how could they be so gay when they were eating skewers outside? They must be high. Let's rub our eyes. Fujio took advantage of this moment to pull herself back to her seat. She had a piece of meat in her mouth, and her lips were still half-curved. She smiled handsomely and wantonly. Sure enough, it tastes good. Chin-mo tilted his head and smiled. Then he leaned forward and pinched the youngster's chin with his fingers. That aura of abstinence made people's hearts race. If you dare to eat again, I promise I will have many ways to make you regret it, understand? Hey, Brother Mo, this position is a bit close. Fujio reminded him with a smile. Chin-mo sneered and slowly rubbed the youngster's chin with his thumb. Why didn't you say close when you leaned over? I almost kissed you. Fujio laughed when she heard the last 4 words and replied, or Brother Mo will kiss me back. As soon as she said that, Fujio felt terrible. The Almighty was capable of anything. Why did he continue to provoke her at this moment? Sure enough, the Almighty didn't say anything. He just looked at her with a deep and dangerous gaze that made people's breathing slow down. The smell of barbecue lingered in her breath. Even the guys next door didn't move. She was going to die. That was the only feeling Fujio had. She had to escape. When necessary, Fujio's skills could be improved by 3 levels, like now. She tilted her head, then turned sideways. Her long legs didn't forget to hit a wooden stool to block Chin-mo's movement. However, she avoided the front and the back. The hat on her black coat was pulled. Fujio bounced back like a spring. Because of the force, Fujio's back crashed into Chin-mo's arms. If it was anyone else, they would definitely be locked on, but it was Fujio. With a twist of his waist, he pulled his left hand out of his sleeve, then lowered his head and bent over. As his handsome face passed by, he pulled out his right sleeve. His movements were very handsome and neat, and even carried the sound of the wind. The people around them were indeed dumbfounded. Was this a transition from a homo movie to a martial arts blockbuster? Damn it, give them some time to accept it, okay? But how did he do it? With such good skills, he must have fought a lot. They were all men. Seeing such a scene, they all felt their blood boiling. They couldn't help but want to cheer for the young man. Great! Unfortunately, as soon as the onlookers finished saying, good. Chapter 379. Still want to escape? Chi Nemo raised his eyebrows, and as he leaned forward, it became hard to escape. Coupled with the smell of alcohol on his body, the thick scent of sandalwood floated along with his movements. Fujio knew she was going to die this time. She was so stupid that she forgot that the Almighty was drunk and shouldn't have flirted with him. At this moment, the Almighty was obviously not as rational as he used to be. He freed one hand and pressed on the youngster's shoulder. He originally wanted to teach him a lesson, but when he saw the person under him, his thoughts were all gone. All that was left was the warmth left in his memory. It was a very soft touch. What would it feel like if he kissed her? Or perhaps he wanted to see the youngster panicking. The desire to destroy hidden in his nature seemed to become stronger when he touched the sweater under his hand. His eyes were as dark as the night. Chi Nemo looked really handsome and noble. However, his family background was ruthless to the bone. That chiseled side profile and the toughness that surged out at this moment would make any woman's legs go weak. Of course, because of his appearance and the sounds just now, the barbecue shop owner thought that the two of them were fighting because they were drunk. She hurried over and grabbed Chi Nemo. Hey, young man, let's talk this out. Don't fight, don't fight. The barbecue auntie was very normal. She never thought that the posture just now could be a kiss. After all, they were two young men. Let go, let go. The barbecue auntie grabbed Chi Nemo with a face full of righteousness. Chi Nemo looked sideways and paused. That expression was a little hard to describe. But Fujio laughed, which made Chi Nemo want to teach this guy a lesson again. The barbecue probably saw the meaning in Chi Nemo's eyes, so she became very serious. You look like a big brother. How can you push him down on the table and beat him up? Chi Nemo didn't say anything, mainly because the school tyrant Chin had never been taught such a lesson before. Fujio laughed and said, Andy, it's okay. We were just playing. The barbecue was confused. That action just now didn't look like a joke. Fujio put one hand in her pocket. It was really a joke, right, brother? With that, she lifted her head and glanced over at Chi Nemo. That handsome face of hers was asking for a beating. At this moment, Chi Nemo had returned to his usual image of a rich young master. In fact, other than in front of the youngster, Almighty Chin would occasionally show his ruthlessness. In front of others, he would always be cold and aloof. Yes. It was a very indifferent word. The lady boss shook her head and said to her husband, Nowadays, older brothers don't even know how to give in to their younger brothers. Chi Nemo. Fujio couldn't stop laughing. She simply tilted her head on Chi Nemo's shoulder. That furry head made Chi Nemo hold it in for a long time before he pulled the young man over and beat him up. In front of outsiders, it was indeed necessary to give way a little. However, he also realized that this younger brother of his was the type of person who was more and more presumptuous. However, when she looked to the side, the young man's smile was too bright. It was like a warm afternoon, sitting at home with the window opened, and the clear halo shone down. Chi Nemo didn't push the youngster away. He just stood there, cold and aloof. His whole body emitted an aura of abstinence. His black clothes and black eyes made him look like a devil. Chapter 380. After all, they were outside. Fujio didn't laugh for long. She still had to sit down and eat. But from then on, the lady boss would always look over at Chi Nemo before she sprinkled cumin on the meat skewers. She looked like she was saying, I'm watching you. You better not bully your little brother. Fujio giggled. The gaming otakus who had been watching for a long time drank their beer. Damn, why was it that once a person was handsome, everything looked good? They absolutely didn't believe that these two were fine. But that wasn't the point. Instead, one of their phones rang, and there was only one message on WeChat. Are they afraid to come? That person showed the message to his friends. F***y, mother f***ker. Tell him, let's kill him. Isn't that a prick? But after saying that, they realized that they couldn't team up. They were short of one player in the 5v5 battle. The four of them looked at each other and remembered what the man in front of them had just said. One of them stood up directly and walked over to Fujio's table. Bro, I heard you say that you're good at games, right? That person had a cigarette in his mouth and thought that he was very handsome. After all, men didn't just look at faces, but sometimes. That person wanted to talk about temperament, but when Chin Emo looked up, he didn't know why, but his heart trembled a little. He coughed heavily as if he was choking on the smoke. It seemed that even his temperament had lost? No, that wasn't important. He was here to invite someone. Chin Emo reached out his hand to block the smoke, and his voice was very calm. My brother's eyes are inflamed, and they can't be stimulated. Please pinch it out, sir. Probably because Chin Mo's aura was too intimidating, that young man really pinched the cigarette out. After that, his eyes widened. Wait a minute, why did he have to listen to whatever this man said? Fujio looked at that pair of bell-like eyes, and she could roughly guess what this person was thinking. It was too simple, and the expression on his face was obvious. But no wonder she hadn't seen the almighty smoke these days. It was all because of her eyes. Fujio looked at Chin Emo from the side. The almighty was so nice, good-looking, and considerate. If they weren't so close, and he was so rich that she couldn't control him, she would have taken him home and raised him. But this was just a thought. The almighty was too smart, and it wasn't easy to trick him. I've put out the cigarette. What do you think? Do you want to fight? That person pointed behind him and said, there are 4 of us. You can just send one person. It's just enough for a 5v5. Fujio's hands itched at the mention of games. No, that's not right either. Rather than saying that she was itching to play games, it was more accurate to say that her hands were itching when she heard about electronic products. To think that a hacker like her wouldn't even let her touch a phone, let alone a computer. When will this pain in the ass eyes get better? Fujio was a little depressed. Chin Emo glanced at the youngster, emptying one hand to press down on Fujio's head, meaning to stop her from stealing. His eyes were on that person, and his voice was graceful. You haven't played the mobile version before. Was this a rejection? Are you kidding me? He had already snuffed out his cigarette, and this man still refused him? So what if you're handsome? Didn't you just say that you're so powerful that you can remember all the skills and equipment? Now, you don't dare to attack? Fujio was still struggling. Now that he heard what that person said, the corner of his mouth twitched. She didn't die just now because the lady boss showed up. This person was definitely going to die. Chapter 381. Luckily, his friends were smart enough to know that Chin Emo wasn't someone to be messed with. They stopped their brother and explained, Bro, we need someone to play the game. We're in a hurry, so the gangs are fighting. Gangs? Fujio raised her eyebrows. When did Hiro have gangs? Unexpectedly, that guy answered seriously, not in Hiro. It's a gang war between our number 2 middle school and number 1 middle school. We can only win and not lose. As a high school student from number 1 middle school, Fujio didn't know how to face them. Helplessly, that person didn't stop talking. He was very agitated. They suddenly invited us and provoked us on Hiro. You saw it too. We only have 4 people now. We can't fight 5v5 with 1 less, so they went crazy. They think we're cowards. As the man spoke, he hammered the table heavily. How can our second high school be more cowardly than those nerds in first high school? All of them dress like country bumpkins and only know how to study all day. This is an insult to our second high school. That's right. The other 3 friends will follow suit. They looked like they were betting on their reputation. That attitude was very Chunibyo. Facing such a passionate invitation, Chinemo said slowly, "If that's the case, then I can't join you." But the young man glared at him again. "Bro, even if my words were a bit harsh, this is an emergency. As a man, you should understand that we can't lose face at this time. We have to fight them." Chinemo glanced at him and said in a low voice, "Because I used to be a student from number 1 middle school." All of a sudden, those 4 people were dumbfounded. They looked like idiots. They thought about what they just said. Those nerds from number 1 middle school, all dressed like country bumpkins, why did they feel like they were talking about themselves when they compared themselves to men? After all, the other guy was so handsome. But that wasn't the point. The point was that even decades ago, number 1 middle school and number 2 middle school were archenemies. Archenemies? Any boy who went to school knew what that meant. It was unlikely that the other guy would help them. Those 4 people looked at Fujio at the same time. Fujio still wanted to steal some meat, but under his gaze, the Almighty pushed her head away again. When Chinemo was doing this, he didn't forget to deliver the final blow. He's even worse, he's in number 1 middle school now. But in an instant, the atmosphere in the barbecue house was quiet. Fujio looked at the 4 boys in front of her. Each of them had their eyes wide open and looked like they were choking. She wanted to laugh. Their naivety was too chunibyu. F***ck. That person tilted his head and didn't place any hope on this side. He said to his companions, "What should we do? Are we just going to let Lu Zongming bully us?" Hearing that, Fujio's hand paused. "Who did you just say?" "Lu Zongming." This group of gaming nerds only knew how to spit out bubbles. "You don't know the boss of your number 1 middle school?" "Boss?" Fujio pondered over those 2 words and laughed. "I do, but there's a grudge between us, so I can help you fight this round. There's a condition. If I win, you can treat us to our table." "Why should we treat you?" The gangster began to glare again. Fujio smiled and said, "It's fine if you don't want to. It's just that the boss of number 2 middle school doesn't dare to accept the boss of number 1 middle school." I'm so frustrated. Just when Fujio thought he was going to say something, the gangster turned his head. The gangster turned his head. "Let me see how much money we can gather." Chapter 382. After saying that, the 4 of them started to dig into their pockets. They were really trying to pool money. "Brother, what you're doing is wrong." The gangster turned his head as he collected the money. "We don't need anything from them. This is called loyalty." Fujio chuckled. "I'm just a student from number 1 middle school, and I feel guilty helping you guys fight against number 1 middle school. How about you be a little more loyal and stop fighting?" "Please, brother, can you control your expression when you're talking about guilt? I can't see where you're guilty at all." The 4 students from number 2 middle school emptied their pockets, but they only had 80 yuan. They put it on the corner of the table and said, "This is all we have left after we pay the bill." Fujio counted the things she wanted from the Almighty. 80 was enough, so she smiled faintly and said, "Give me a phone, let's begin." "You don't even have a phone? Then why are we playing?" The 4 students from second high school started to pull at their hair after saying that. Fujio raised her eyebrows. "Borrow one from the lady boss." "The lady boss is using a Nokia. You can't use it at all." It seemed that he often ate skewers here. He even knew what the lady boss used. Fujio also felt that it was a pity. She wanted to teach Lu Zongming another lesson. Of course, Chinemo could see the youngster's expression. He frowned. "What's wrong with Lu Zongming? You've blocked me before." Fujio was telling the truth even though she didn't say the rest. When Chinemo heard this, his eyes turned cold. He tilted his head and said to the second high students who were still scratching their heads, "I'll do it." "Really?" The gangster's eyes lit up, and then he asked, "Are you sure you have a cell phone?" Chinemo didn't speak. He glanced at him, took out his phone, and played with it in his palm. The people on the other side all perked up. "We're from Area A. Come in." "You need to wait for 3 minutes, Chinemo replied calmly. The gangster stared at him again. "Why?" "Download." Indeed, Chin Mo has never played mobile games. After all, professional leagues are controlled by computers. Seeing this, the four of them were a little worried. They whispered, "It feels a little dangerous. He didn't even download the game. Will he fail? There's no other way. If this drags on, Lu Zhongming will really think that he can do it." Someone said, "If worst comes to worst, we'll protect him and let him use a healing skill. We don't have to count on him to kill people, but he can heal us." All right. On the other side, the four of them were seriously discussing tactics. Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. Don't let the Almighty move to kill? This was really very difficult. There was wireless internet in the barbecue shop, so it wouldn't take long to download a mobile game. Helplessly, the gangster already regarded Chin Mo as a bragging newcomer, so he looked at Fu Jiu with pity in his eyes. When Fu Jiu saw that he was about to enter his account number, she reached out her hand to stop him. She lowered her voice and said, "Brother Mo, use my alternate account. Otherwise, they will go crazy when they see your name." Chin Mo didn't reject. Account password? 135975280, password 000000. Fu Jiu said after she finished reporting. Chin Mo clicked confirm and logged into the game. Chapter 383. Yes, of course. The other three were very serious. Talking about strategy with the Almighty? Why did Fu Jiu feel like laughing when she heard the words of this group of Chunibyu? She did laugh, and the four of them looked at her at the same time, as if saying, "Why are you laughing at such a serious thing? This is a fight, and it concerns a man's face and reputation." Being stared at like that, Fu Jiu felt that she should restrain herself, but she couldn't help it. Only God knew how funny their expressions were. She tilted her head and leaned on the Almighty's shoulder while laughing. Even her head was shaking. Chin Mo had just chosen his skill when he felt a burst of breath behind his neck, and his fingers froze. "Handsome, what are you doing? Come with us." The gangster never stopped talking while he was playing the game. Wherever the character tilted in the game, his body would tilt in the same direction. Those who didn't know would think that he was playing a racing game. "Oh my God, you almost hit me." Fu Jiu watched from the side and wanted to laugh again. She thought, "Who else can I hit but you?" But she also realized that the Almighty didn't seem to be moving, so she wanted to look up at him. But before she could do anything, the Almighty reached out and pushed her head away. He pointed a finger at her, looking very handsome. "Move aside." The impact wasn't just a little. Chin Mo thought to himself that it was really troublesome to raise a little brother like this. Fu Jiu saw that the Almighty didn't allow her to come closer, so she pulled her chair and moved closer to the gangster. She looked at the screen. "Don't go over, there's someone, run to the left." The gangster was still howling. He thought he was going to die, but after hearing the young man's words, he subconsciously ran to the left and escaped. He seemed to be relieved and he quickly healed himself. At the same time, he saw on the map that Chin Mo didn't seem to be moving forward at all. As the four of them fought, they said, "Protect this handsome guy." Got it. Got it. Obviously, they had already regarded Chin Mo as a newbie. "Let's all go to the middle lane and wipe them out." They were still talking about wiping them out, but suddenly a person jumped out from the bushes and used a stun skill and a deceleration skill. The four of them lost half of their HP in an instant. F***CK. The gangster's body moved again. "Hurry up and run back." What the F***CK is going on? This technique isn't Lu Zhongming's at all. The gangster was right. This technology was indeed not Lu Zhongming's technology. Instead, it was Fu Shiming who had returned to the esports world. Lu Zhongming is cheating. After seeing the avatar, the gangster understood everything. They found a professional player to form a team. F***CK him. Fu Jiu raised her eyebrows. "Professional player? The person who's chasing me is the most handsome guy in your school, Fu Shiming." "That illegitimate child." Fu Jiu's eyes paused for a moment. The gangster's body shook even more violently. As one of them died, he gritted his teeth and said, How can we fight like this? Even a single pro player could probably wipe them out, not to mention a rookie on their side. Moreover, they had already lost one person. There were 3 people attacking the defense tower. They had to gather everyone on their side so that they wouldn't die too badly. Wait a minute, then who is still on the way? Isn't that right? The gangster took a closer look and saw that it was the handsome guy next to him. Chapter 384. However, in the next second, the gangster was shocked. Even his fingers were shaking, because 2 words suddenly appeared on the screen. K.O. It wasn't the other side who KO'd them, but someone on their side killed the other side. They got the first kill? He couldn't be seeing things, right? The gangster rubbed his eyes, and the other 3 were also dumbfounded. Just like that, before the 4 of them could recover from the shock, they heard the special sound of the game. Double kill. F***CK. The gangster couldn't help but widen his eyes. He raised his head and looked at Chinemo. He saw that the handsome man pressed forward with his left hand, and the fingers of his right hand moved back and forth. The screen sped up beautifully, and he pressed a person to death. Triple kill. The gangster was dumbfounded. The other 3 were also dumbfounded. They even forgot to press forward with their fingers. However, the one who killed them looked indifferent. He turned left and quickly ran back to the city. He waited for them at the city gate. Then, he emptied one hand and took a sip of wine. His voice was very calm. Why don't you continue to rush forward? The 4 of them woke up immediately. She unconsciously followed behind the man. The gangster was shocked, and the most depressing thing was that the man still had time to drink. But just now, he didn't even know how to move. Why did it seem like he had a cheat code? The gangster didn't understand, so he said, "Bro, I thought you were a noob when I saw your moves, but I didn't expect you to be so tough." Chin-mo glanced at him and said in a low voice, "It's not easy to play with a phone, so I need to get used to it." The gangster. You killed 3 people after you got used to it. F***CK, what kind of attack power is this? Do you think we will believe you? The teenager didn't believe it, but Fujio did. The Almighty didn't play mobile games. In his hands, mobile phones and tablets were all tools for holding international conferences. There was one thing that Fujio didn't know. If she hadn't leaned behind Chin-mo and affected the others with her breath, the Almighty didn't need to go back to the city to replenish his HP. On the other end of the phone, Lu Zhongming cursed fiercely, "What the hell? I took a drop of HP from the opponent. How did I die?" Fu Shiming was sitting beside him. His face was filled with arrogance. He had successfully taken down one of the defense towers and was very nonchalant. He probably bought a skill. "Why do you care so much? I'll help you kill them later." Young Master Fu is right. Lu Zhongming tried to curry favor with Fu Shiming. Young Master Fu wasn't here just now. Otherwise, that assassin in black would have died even if he had come 3 times. With young Master Fu around, they definitely wouldn't lose. It was just that they had been careless. So what if the other side was good? Could they be better than pro players? With this thought in mind, Lu Zhongming was ready to go on a killing spree. F***CK. It's Fu Shiming. The gangster's body began to shake left and right again. "Hide, don't let him touch you." Chin-mo's voice was firm. He only said one word, "Kill." The gangster wanted to say, "Handsome, I am the commander of the battle. Shouldn't you be the one listening to me?" Chapter 385. The team battle began. Both number 2 middle school and number 1 middle school were attacking the middle lane. But these teammates weren't from the Supreme Alliance. And in the world of a Chunibyu, once they decided to kill, they didn't care about anything else. Especially the gangster. He shouted, "Ah, ah, ah, ah," and rushed towards Fu Shiming's side. Fujio was stunned by his voice effect, and it was too late for her to pull his arm back. They watched as he charged into the crowd. 5 people surrounded him in an instant, and he was instantly killed. Fujio looked at the distance. The Almighty couldn't save him in time even if he wanted to. F***ck. You killed my brother. Do you think I don't exist? Another person went berserk and rushed forward. Fu Jiao held her forehead helplessly, and her silver hair fell between her fingers. Didn't they say they would fight with strategy? Was this their strategy? Kill him, yes, kill him. The gangster was dead, but he didn't forget to shout. The lady boss thought that something had happened, and she kept turning her head back. She saw a few people lowering their heads and playing with their phones. The gangster was too eye-catching. Luckily, there weren't many people in this barbecue shop. Otherwise, they would be surrounded by people with their silly looks. Double kill. Needless to say, another Chunibyu died on their side. This time, the Almighty managed to make it, but someone was faster than him. With a bang, he jumped forward and was eliminated. Fu Jiao wanted to sigh at such a suicidal way of fighting. The Almighty didn't show any emotion at all, and he retreated to the defense tower with his handsome side profile. Handsome, what are you doing? Charge. The Chunibyu who hadn't been killed had red eyes, and he continued to die. Double kill. This time, the Almighty was the only one left under the defense tower. The operation of the phone affected his hand speed. But Fu Jiao could see that the Almighty had lost a drop of blood to save one of the suicidal people. He stood under the tower, intending to fight 5 at once. The gangster finally succeeded in resurrecting, and he was about to rush forward. But before he could move his fingers, the phone in front of him was snatched away for some unknown reason. Hey, that's my... The gangster shouted at Fu Jiao. Qin Mo's fingers moved a little. He thought to himself, forget it. Fu Jiao has been very obedient these past few days. She probably can't resist touching her phone anymore. He could understand that a teenager in puberty would probably not be able to endure such a scene. Fu Jiao really couldn't stand it. Even though she knew that the Almighty could stand in front of the defense tower and take on 5 people at once, she was still unhappy to see that scene. What kind of people were they? Did they think they were worthy of ganging up on a god? The gangster was completely shocked by the murderous look on Fu Jiao's face. He didn't expect that the handsome guy who had been smiling just now would turn into a demon in the blink of an eye. His face was still the same, so handsome that it made them, who were talented but not good-looking, jealous, but his aura was completely different. It was like a sword that had been enlightened, and his whole body was exuding a sharp aura. No, don't rush forward. The gangster shouted gloomily, you are going to die. Fu Jiao didn't even raise her head. You also know what it means to die? The gangster was speechless. Why did he feel that this sentence was mocking him? He must be thinking too much. Yes, the situation was very serious. Chapter 386. Hey, those idiots on the other side are here to die again. Lu Zhongming's eyes lit up with excitement. He pressed the phone screen with his thumb, and the bloodthirsty look on the corner of his mouth was obvious. Fu Shiming didn't care at all. He raised his chin coldly and arrogantly. Kill the pig under the defense tower first. It's so stupid. Lu Zhongming smiled proudly. 5 against 2, they are dead for sure. Still rushing forward, they are sending their heads to us. The 2 people who had been killed by the Almighty whispered, the person standing under the tower seems to be very powerful. Don't be afraid. We have young Master Fu. Lu Zhongming turned on the voice message. Let's go. Fu Shiming also said, don't worry, I can kill them alone. As soon as he said that, the others ran forward faster. The main thing was that the person standing under the tower seemed to have taken a step back, starting the chasing and killing mode. The Almighty did take a step back, but he didn't want to run away. Instead, he was waiting for the person who was about to catch up with him. Fu Jiao. He didn't know if it was because he had seen the real person before. The gangster felt that the person standing next to the defense tower was very cool. He was a bit like an ancient king. Just standing there, he gave people a feeling of extreme handsomeness. It was just a few seconds. The gangster looked at the youngster's slender fingers turning over and over on the screen. Even when he was running forward, he didn't forget to change his equipment, and those attacking monsters didn't hit him. The gangster wanted to ask how the youngster did it. On the phone screen, The two handsome guys met. He was still staring at the screen, and he could clearly see that the person standing under the defense tower waved his long black sleeves and suddenly hooked a person with a long knife. The youngster accelerated and made a critical hit. That person's HP dropped by more than half instantly. The gangster shouted, "He wants to escape." But could he escape? The Almighty was blocking in front of him. The gangster really didn't know how the handsome guy did it. He turned his fingers, turned his head, and directly pulled back. But this meant that the handsome guy's back was exposed to the enemy. Oh no, the handsome guy was finished. That was what the gangster thought. But the next second he changed his mind. This was because the young man on his left had dived down and opened his arms to block the attack. At the same time, he couldn't give his opponent another blow. The gangster was really dumbfounded. Can games be played like this? This coordination was so F***ing cool. The two of them healed together under the tower. Without any pause, Chin Mo waved his Grim Reaper's long knife again. The person who was about to ambush the youngster was instantly killed on the spot. Double kill. The expressions of the second-year middle school students could no longer be described with words. Every one of them had their mouths agape. Even in a 2v5 situation, they could still kill their opponents. Moreover, both of them were now fully healed. It sounded like a long time, but in reality, it only took less than 20 seconds. When the game's music started playing, Fu Ximing's expression changed. He pressed the phone and cursed, "Is there a hole in your brain? Get out of the way." Lu Zhongming was still alive, but he wasn't at full health. The dead man was still in a daze. The speed was too fast. They really didn't know how they died. The most terrible thing was that every whip of the opponent was so accurate that it made people shudder. Chapter 387. That was the kind of fear that only people who were killed would feel. Fu Ximing thought that they were too stupid. What was so good about the other side? They didn't even dare to go out of the city wall. Two cowards. Who knew that as soon as he had this thought? The two figures who were still standing at the bottom of the tower jumped out at the same time and advanced side by side. They were so fast that no one had any time to defend against them. In the barbecue shop, nothing could be heard except the sound of the game. The gangster's expression at this time should be a close-up. After all, it was really hard to describe. How could they be so fast? And why did these two people have such a tacit understanding that they didn't even talk to each other and just rushed out together? The youngster's operation was so beautiful that the gangster's mouth was wide open. Silver hair, black ear studs, and a green bean in his mouth. How could he be so good at fighting? Not to mention the handsome guy on the other side. He asked him in a low voice while fighting, "Which one is Lu Zhongming?" The gangster felt that he had been ordered around the whole day, which made him depressed. The one with the golden armor. How strange. He could even see the coldness that surged out of the handsome man's deep eyes after he said that. Then the next second, Lu Zhongming was killed. Annihilated. 3 kills. He had to say that the sound effect was really cool. "Wait for me." The gangster learned from Fujio. He grabbed the cell phone of his friend who had just been resurrected and wanted to rush forward in a hurry. But he didn't know. As soon as he said that, the youngster spun his sword and jumped up directly. Even his black battle robe was shining with silver light. He used a sniper critical hit. For people had died on the other side. How long did it take? 21 seconds. The gangster really had an indescribable feeling now. Do you know what a game is? That was his account. That incomparably awesome person on the screen was his own account. Although he wasn't the one playing, that feeling was still awesome. How could his account be so cool? The gangster was so happy. But Fu Ximing wanted to curse. 2v5. 5 people couldn't beat 2 people, and 4 of them were killed by the other side in one shot. So noob. Even now, he still felt that his teammates were too weak. In Fu Ximing's heart, no matter how powerful the other party was, he was just an amateur. What's there to be afraid of 2 amateurs? He arrogantly ran to the bottom of his own defense tower. He didn't wait for his teammates to recover their HP. He stopped there and prepared to kill one of the two first. However, just as he was about to make a move, he was unexpectedly nailed to the spot by his opponent. Fu Ximing wasn't afraid. After all, he was in the pagoda, and the other party wouldn't dare to recklessly rush forward. Therefore, this was all his wishful thinking. The gangster saw the two wind-like shadows directly swept to the bottom of the tower and then stepped back. Even Fu Ximing was hooked out. Outside the defense tower, Fu Ximing had no protection. He wanted to retreat, but damn it, he couldn't leave. It was Qin Mo. He hadn't even used his ultimate move yet, so he directly sent it over and froze him in the middle. The gangster was also excited at this time. He clenched his fists. Kill him, handsome, kill him. Chapter 388. But why didn't he just kill him? The four kids couldn't understand at all. If he didn't kill him, the dead ones would revive. What was this handsome guy thinking? The gangster looked at Qin Mo, and there was no change in his emotions at all. But Fu Jiu knew what the Almighty was doing. He was helping her get back at him. After all, he was the son of San. Thinking of this, she even smiled a little. She cut off Fu Ximing's blood bit by bit. At first, Fu Ximing thought that his opponent's skills were rubbish and couldn't kill him. But when he recovered and was about to run away, he suddenly stopped. Another freezing skill came and he couldn't move at all. F***CK. Fu Ximing cursed in a low voice. Fu Jiu began to jump over and cut off his blood, again with small cuts. The two kids sitting next to Fu Ximing weren't stupid. This guy didn't play like that just now. He used big moves. Fu Ximing's face turned ugly. Until he was frozen for the third time, everyone understood. Was he playing this way on purpose? Why did it feel like he was playing with them? The three students from number 1 middle school didn't dare to say this out loud. After all, they knew Fu Ximing's temper. Fu Ximing was about to explode. At the fourth time, he shouted, F***CK, how many times did he freeze? In fact, Almighty Qin didn't have many freezing skills. When he saw the youngster, he directly bought 10 to use first. That was to say, from the moment Fu Jiu touched the phone, Almighty Qin had made up his mind to torture Fu Ximing. This was also the reason why Fu Ximing could live until now. No matter how slow those four kids were, they could see that the guy next to them did it on purpose. After all, it was the fifth freeze. The gangster couldn't help but swallow his saliva. He began to feel lucky that he didn't fight with this handsome guy just now. This way of fighting, any man would suffer from internal injuries from anger. What the F***CK are you talking about? Hurry up and come over. Fu Ximing's face turned red. Just now, he arrogantly said that he could destroy the whole team by himself, but in the end, he was beaten up in all kinds of ways. This slap in the face was really embarrassing. The number 1 middle school students were also anxious. I still have 9 seconds, young Master Fu, please wait a little longer. Fu Ximing clenched his teeth. When he was frozen again, he threw it hard. The phone screen shattered. There was a moment of silence. The game continued. The four of them didn't have time to talk. They were finally resurrected, so they had to rush forward. Fu Ximing pushed the other person away, took the other person's phone, and started to operate again. He had to kill the two of them. The gangster also realized that all of his opponents had been resurrected. In fact, they had also revived and were much faster than the other side. However, they were too far away from the other side's city wall and couldn't make it in time. He anxiously controlled his character. Stop killing. Come back. Come back. We'll all die together. Retreat? How could this be? The two of them worked together to extinguish the frozen one and directly rush towards the four people. It was followed by hook, hit, and kill. The incessant light seemed to fill up the entire screen. The two figures, one at the front and one at the back, coordinated like the sharpness of a sword. He was simply killing people in seconds. Triple kill. Then he turned around and bit it. What a beautiful kill. Then a blood-shaking game special effects sound came over. Team destroyed. Chapter 389. The youths at the side were already dumbfounded. They stared blankly at the two words that represented victory. They were a little dazed. After Fujio finished the call, she threw the phone back into the gangster's hand. She stood up with one hand in her pocket, looking extremely handsome. I won. Go and pay the bill. If those who were speculating on the official Weibo that Supreme Alliance might not make it to the top for this year saw this, they would definitely shut their mouths immediately. Supreme Alliance, without anyone knowing, already had their most lethal secret weapon. That was Chin Mo and Fujio's joint main attack. The four middle schoolers at the barbecue shop were so shocked that they couldn't come back to their senses. The gangster pulled over a chair after paying the bill and said to Fujio, "How about this, handsome, take us as your disciples, and we'll take care of you when you go to school. I'm from number 1 middle school, you're from number 2 middle school." Fujio couldn't help but remind them, "We're not from the same school." The gangster's eyes darkened and he immediately said, "Our number 2 middle school is just next to number 1 middle school. Even though we're not in the same school, we can still protect you. You're really handsome. I'm not bragging, but the boss of your number 1 middle school has to avoid the four of us." Fujio looked up at him. What? The gangster really couldn't understand the youngster. Are all gaming experts like this? Do you not understand the pain of reality? If you encounter any trouble in school. The gangster wanted to persuade him. Fujio interrupted him with a smile. What kind of trouble do you think I can get into with my skills? One sentence. The gangster choked at once. Of course, they still wanted to protect him. How could she have forgotten the way this handsome guy moved in the barbecue shop just now? Perhaps even the four of them wouldn't be able to stop him. Something was not right. Wait a minute. Are you really from number 1 middle school? Since when did number 1 middle school have such a good fighter? Fujio raised her eyebrows and looked serious. I'm a straight A student, so of course I'm from number 1 middle school. Alright, the gangster was convinced. After all, looking at the young man's appearance, he was indeed different from them. Today, thanks. Fujio chuckled. The four middle schoolers left first. Before they left, they didn't forget to look back. They wondered who these two people were. They could even kill pro players. They were too amazing. As for the rest, don't expect a bunch of Chunibu kids to have so many brain cells. After the gangster left, the barbecue shop was much quieter. Chinamo turned his head and only glanced at Fujio. His eyes were full of mockery, and his temperament didn't change at all. Scholar? Fujio sat up straight. Compared to them, I'm a straight A student. Chinamo smiled. Come here. What? Although Fujio was confused, she still went over. Chinamo stretched out his hand and pinched that handsome face. He said faintly, "Let's see how thick my little brother's skin is." Fujio. Almighty Chin had said that he liked to see young men depressed. But in this position, the youngster's knee had touched him, and the face in front of him was too fair and beautiful. Chinmo's eyes darkened, and he immediately retracted his hand, as though there were germs on the youngster. Fujio also paused because of Chinmo's action. She raised her eyebrows slightly. Chapter 390. On the other side, Fu Shiming, who lost the game, kicked the wooden chair hard with his right leg. The opponent is definitely not an ordinary player. No one in number 1 middle school dared to speak. Fu Shiming couldn't swallow his anger. Lu Zhongming. I'm here. Lu Zhongming answered immediately. Fu Shiming narrowed his eyes. Go and ask who played this game tomorrow. Okay. Lu Zhongming agreed, but he knew that it was not going to be easy. The students in number 2 middle school who weren't good at studying were always better than the students in number 1 middle school. How could he go to number 2 middle school to ask? But there were other ways, so he had to think about it. The night outside grew even darker. The atmosphere in the barbecue shop seemed to be frozen. Chin Nemo couldn't explain why he suddenly flung his hand away. Then his phone screen lit up. It was Secretary Liang. So Chin, where are you? Chin Nemo turned his head and said in a low and hoarse voice, What's up? Young Master Han was worried about you, so he asked me to call. From Secretary Liang's words, Qin Mo knew that Han Feng was taking the initiative to ease the tension. He didn't say much and only gave Secretary Liang an address. Secretary Liang paused. Then young Master Jiao, who is going to pick you up, beep. Before Secretary Liang could finish, the other side hung up. Secretary Liang was sure that CEO Qin heard him, and he even paused for a second. But for some reason, CEO Qin didn't seem to be acting right today. Fu Jiao heard that Secretary Liang was going to pick her up, so she didn't say much. She raised her hand and drank the last sip of tea. With one hand in her pocket, she walked out of the barbecue shop with Qin Mo. It was foggy and cold outside. Luckily, it was almost Christmas, so the decorations in the shops along the street were quite warm. Fu Jiao saw that the Almighty didn't want to skateboard with her anymore, so she lifted her foot. When the skateboard flew up, she caught it and held it horizontally behind her waist. When Secretary Liang drove over, he saw such a handsome scene. Since they had a car, of course they would take it. Fu Jiao was close, so it took less than 5 minutes to get there. After the young man got off, Secretary Liang felt that the atmosphere in the car wasn't right, especially where Boss Qin was sitting. The neon lights were reflected on the car window. From the rearview mirror, Secretary Liang could only see a blurry side profile. His black hair fell down, covering his eyes. It was rare to see him like this. The reason why he suddenly pulled his hand back was because he wanted to lower his head to do something. However, even he himself did not know why he had such a huge reaction at that time. He could even see the astonishment on the youth's face. However, in the next second, that guy smiled as if nothing had happened. But Qin Mo wasn't completely fine. He reached out and rubbed his forehead. Perhaps it was because he had been paying too much attention to the youth recently. Even so, Qin Mo didn't sleep when he reached the Qin family. In the dark living room, he threw his jacket on the sofa and took out his phone. Naturally, he wanted to send the youngster a WeChat message. Chapter 391. Qin Mo's fingers paused. Then, he exited WeChat and tugged at his collar. He couldn't fall asleep. He glanced at the time on his phone. 11:05. Perhaps he should learn from someone who had a younger brother. Although Qin Mo rarely attended business parties, he knew that Boss Li, who liked to talk business, was definitely awake. He swiped his finger and called. Boss Li picked up the phone quickly. Of course, it depended on who was calling. Boss Qin, what's wrong? Why are you calling me so late? Qin Mo didn't beat around the bush. Is it inconvenient, Boss Li? Boss Li smiled. It's convenient. It's about my younger brother. Qin Mo paused, his voice sinking along with the night. I want to ask Boss Li. After Boss Li heard Qin Mo's troubles, he immediately laughed. Really, all older brothers have the same troubles. Boss Li, did you experience such a situation before? Qin Mo's eyes were deep, and it was hard to read his emotions. On the other side of the phone, Boss Li didn't notice it. It was as if he had met a confidant. Let me tell you, when my brother just entered high school, I was most worried that the person who usually liked to follow behind me and call me brother would suddenly bring me a girl and ignore me as his brother. He even had to listen to that girl's orders. So, every time my brother got close to a girl, I really felt uncomfortable in my heart. There will always be such a stage. After all, an older brother is like a father. So that was the case. Qin Mo listened but didn't say anything. Boss Li continued, as for the patience you mentioned, when my younger brother was in his rebellious phase, he insisted on breaking up with me for the little gold digger. I really wanted to beat him up, but in the end, I endured it. After all, he's my younger brother. As big brothers, we are very indulgent to our younger brothers. If the difference wasn't huge, there might be some arguments. I'm older than my younger brother by 10 years, so I gave in. What else could I do? You don't know, when he was young, I liked to tease him, touch his head, let him stand guard for me. I smoked. Qin Mo listened to Boss Li's recollection with a calm expression, but in his heart he was thinking about something else. Although there were many girls around the youngster, that guy wasn't the type to fall out with him over a gold digger. In comparison, his brother was still better. However, he would not give the youth any chance to get close to any woman. At the same time, this call successfully convinced Chinemo. Not that he would have these feelings, every older brother would have. However, there was one essential difference between him and Boss Lee. Mr. Lee liked to rub his little brother's head and face when he was 6 years old. And Fujio was already 17. Boss Lee hung up the phone, still feeling sympathetic. He pulled his wife and said, "Look at this young Master Chin who has shaken Jiang City. He's no different from an ordinary person when it comes to his younger brother." At the same time, at the Fu family, Fujio, who had just come out of the bathroom, put a white towel over her head and subconsciously reached for her phone. There was nothing. She looked at the desk again. Even her notebook was gone. How many more days do I have to live like an ascetic? Fujio lay back. She thought about how the Almighty froze Fu Shiming and let her kill him bit by bit today, and her thin lips curled up. She had never been protected by anyone like this. Chapter 392. The lights dimmed. Fujio, who was asleep, didn't know that the comments on the internet had started to change. It was all because of Callie. What happened today made them very angry. Lily was the one with the darkest eyes. Fujio's picking up of Han Susu messed up her plan, and she was kicked out of the Han family. Originally, she wanted to take advantage of Han Susu's anger to say something bad about Fujio, so she didn't lose too badly. Unexpectedly, Han Feng didn't let them get close to Han Susu. He said that it was getting late and that they should go home early. In fact, his attitude wasn't like that. "Captain, what should we do now?" Before Lioli could speak, someone was holding a phone and said, "Wait a minute, look at this." It was an official post, right? Their previous posts were starting to have an effect. Someone had already started to say, "Although I like watching Spade Z play games, he is not a good person. He has such a bad temper." Yeah, his fans are also a bunch of brainless fans. That's enough. As soon as that person finished speaking, the post was deleted. Once it was deleted, that person was not convinced. "Admin, why did you delete my post?" *CKU. The curses at the end were very harsh. Someone even comforted that person. "It's normal. My post was also deleted. I feel sorry for the original poster." What's more, someone left a comment saying, "It seems that someone left a comment to slander you. I think it has something to do with Spade Z himself. He has a problem with everyone. I'm a fan. Give up." I'm not a fan of Spade Z, but I'm a fan of the Supreme Alliance. I think the Supreme Alliance should reconsider whether to let Spade Z play in the national competition. To be honest, I've never seen anyone like him. It was because of these people that the Cali team was happy to watch. Lily laughed. "What did I say? Some things don't need to be done by ourselves. We just need a little bit of encouragement, and people will follow." The Cali team was happy. This useless young Master Fu deserves to be scolded. Lioli glanced at the official post again. Unfortunately, the scolding is not enthusiastic enough. After all, these people are the minority, so we need to add more fuel to the fire. "Captain, do you have any good ideas?" Hearing this, the eyes of the Cali team lit up. Lioli touched the phone screen. Han Susu was the best at this, but it seems that we can only turn to the Fu family. The Fu family? Someone was confused. "What do you mean by looking for the Fu family?" Lioli lifted her lips lightly. "We aren't the only ones who want Spade Z to leave Supreme Alliance. There are a few others, such as his half-brother, Fu Shiming." When Team Cali heard this, a smile appeared on their faces. Captain means to leave it to him. He has a good mother and knows how to use public opinion to create hype. Remember, there are some things in the esports circle that are no different from the entertainment circle. If something is said many times, it will become true. Find a time to send these posts to Fu Shiming. Be quick. No problem. Their Cali team was not a weakling. They would never let anyone bully them like this. Didn't Spade Z think he was so great just because he joined Supreme Alliance? Then they would think of a way to get him out. The next day. Chapter 393. Some time ago, thanks to the heavy smog, all the elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools in Jiang City had to suspend classes for 2 days. As a result, Fujio's biological clock was a bit messed up. When she sat up, she yawned lazily. When she turned her head, it was already 8:10. Their first class was at 8:30. And in the crazy number 1 middle school, if someone was late, the uncle guarding the door would record it. There were still 3 days before the national competition. She couldn't be disqualified because of such a small thing. Fujio washed her face very quickly. She didn't look like a girl at all. She put on her school jacket handsomely and skateboarded quickly through the crowd. 10 minutes left. Fujio calculated the time and suddenly stopped the skateboard. She looked in the direction of the school from this direction. The distance was too long. It seemed like she had to take a shortcut. There was a middle school student who rode his bike to school, but he didn't understand why the person in the same school uniform as him suddenly turned around and went in another direction. Class was about to start? Where was that guy going? No matter, he had to rush forward. He couldn't get a demerit. Swoosh. Fujio pushed off with her left leg, stopped the skateboard, and began to estimate the height of the school wall. That's right, Fujio was going to climb over the wall. There was an uncle buying roasted sweet potatoes at the back wall of the school. Seeing the young man stop at such a place and stare at the wall, the corner of his mouth twitched with a cigarette in his mouth. These kids are really... They can't even behave in school. It was a bit high. Fujio made a preliminary judgment and began to look for a foothold. Be careful not to get caught by your school director. The uncle reminded Fujio. She smiled and looked at her watch one last time. There were still 5 minutes left. That was enough. Just as Fujio was about to take a big step, a commotion came from the bustling crowd on the left. There were about 3 or 4 students from number 2 middle school, and they were surrounding a beautiful girl who was dressed like hooligans. That girl looked familiar. She had seen her yesterday. Fujio looked up at the wall on the left, and then at the situation there. Finally, she turned around decisively. The uncle was surprised. You're not going to climb? He's waiting to see this guy wrestle. Fujio waved her hand. I'll do it later. To be honest, Fujio only cared about this because of the Almighty. Based on yesterday's situation, that person with the surname Han should be the Almighty's friend. Since they're friends, I'll save them first. On the other side, Han Susu felt that she was extremely unlucky. She came here to warn Brother Jiang's fat stepsister not to have any other ideas about Brother Jiang, so she didn't bring anyone with her. She didn't expect to encounter such a thing. Get out of my way. Do you know who I am? How dare you treat me like this? Beauty, what's wrong with us? We just want to play with you, right? As he spoke, he reached out to grab Han Susu's hand. But just as he moved, a gust of wind came from behind him. Something was charging straight at the back of his leg, causing him to turn around in shock. Seeing that it was Fujio, that person was amused. Look, I was wondering who it was. The useless nouveau riche is here to give us money again. Fujio indeed knew that person. In the past, she had been stopped in a corner and given money to him several times. Since there was a conflict between them, then there was no need to be long-winded. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.